Eye contact equals power. Imagine locking eyes with someone across the room. That brief moment where your gaze meets theirs is far more than just a glance. It's a silent, primal conversation, a negotiation of power, trust, and threat without a single word spoken. Science tells us that eye contact is one of the most powerful nonverbal tools humans have evolved. It can establish dominance, build intimacy, or provoke fear. In fact, holding a gaze too long can feel like an assertion of control, while avoiding eye contact often signals submission or anxiety. Studies in psychology reveal that when two people hold steady eye contact, their brains release oxytocin, the bonding hormone, strengthening social connection and trust. But when one person stares too intensely, it can trigger the amygdala, the brain's threat center, causing discomfort or aggression. Think about a wild animal staring you down. That unblinking gaze is a challenge, a warning. Humans inherit this same instinctual reaction. In social hierarchies, from boardrooms to playgrounds, eye contact often decides who holds power. Leaders naturally command attention by maintaining steady, confident eye contact. Conversely, shy or fearful individuals tend to look away, signaling vulnerability. This unspoken language shapes everything from courtship to confrontation. Eye contact also calibrates conversations. Brief glances can encourage openness, while prolonged stares may intimidate or provoke withdrawal. Next time you catch someone's eye, remember, this simple act is a dance of dominance and trust, a deep-rooted dialogue etched into our biology, silently shaping human connection and conflict. Imagine walking into a room and instantly feeling a deep connection with someone you've just met, as if you've known each other forever. This powerful, almost magical feeling is often driven by something subtle but profound: mirroring. Mirroring is the unconscious act of copying another person's body language, posture, gestures, or speech patterns. It's a silent dance our brains perform to signal trust and belonging. Neuroscience reveals that when we mimic someone's movements or tone, our brain activates mirror neurons, special cells that fire both when we act and when we observe others acting. This neural mirroring creates empathy, allowing us to feel what others feel, to sense safety, and to build social bonds without a single word spoken. Imagine a conversation where one person leans forward, crosses their legs, and matches the other's calm tone, their brains subtly syncing like two metronomes ticking together. This unconscious mimicry lowers social barriers, telling our minds, they are safe, they are one of us. Studies show that people who naturally mirror tend to be perceived as more trustworthy and likable. For example, in business negotiations, subtle mirroring can shift tension into cooperation, making deals smoother and relationships stronger. Even infants instinctively mirror caregivers' expressions, laying the groundwork for emotional connection and language development. This biological mechanism evolved because survival depended on trusting allies and building groups. Mirroring builds a bridge from isolation to unity, from strangers to friends. Next time you catch yourself copying a gesture or tone, remember, your brain is wiring connection, quietly saying, you belong. This simple, silent act is a powerful tool of human bonding, rooted deep in our biology, shaping every relationship we form. Silence creates pressure. Imagine a moment when words suddenly stop, when silence stretches between two people. It feels heavy, almost electric, as if the air itself is waiting. Silence in conversation isn't neutral. It triggers a subtle but powerful psychological pressure. Our brains interpret this quiet not as calm, but as an urgent signal demanding a response. This is because human communication evolved not just to exchange information, but to maintain social bonds. When silence fills the space, it creates a void, an uncomfortable tension that compels us to act. Studies in social psychology reveal that during silence, the brain's default mode network activates, heightening self-awareness and fueling anxiety. This nervous energy pushes people to break silence, often leading to confessions, admissions, or even lies as we scramble to regain control and connection. For example, in interrogation settings, silence is used strategically to unnerve suspects, encouraging them to speak more than they intended. Or consider everyday conversations where a pause can reveal hidden truths or force someone to confront what they might rather avoid. Silence exposes vulnerability. The need to fill it shapes honesty and deception alike. It's a mirror reflecting our discomfort with uncertainty and the human craving for social harmony. Next time you find yourself in a silent moment, notice how it pulls at you, not just to speak, but to reveal something deeper. Imagine being called lazy so often that your mind begins to believe it, shaping your actions and choices to fit that label. Or hearing smart repeatedly, and suddenly you push harder to prove it true. This is no coincidence. Scientific research reveals that labels don't just describe us, they shape our very destinies. Psychologists call this the labeling effect, a powerful form of self-fulfilling prophecy. When someone assigns a label, it activates expectations that influence how the brain processes information and guides behavior. Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck's studies on mindset show that telling a child they're smart encourages a growth mindset, driving persistence and effort. But labeling someone as lazy can trigger a fixed mindset, undermining motivation and reinforcing the negative label. A striking example is from classroom studies where teachers unknowingly label students as gifted or struggling. Those children internalize these identities, which then shape their academic performance, either flourishing or faltering, based on the expectations set by the label. Neuroscience explains this through the brain's predictive nature. It constantly anticipates outcomes based on past patterns, including the labels attached to our identity. When labeled, neural pathways strengthen to support that belief, making the label a neurological reality, not just a social one. The danger lies in how these labels limit us, boxing human potential into narrow categories, denying the fluidity of growth and change. Yet, the flip side is equally profound. Positive labels can unlock hidden reserves of strength, resilience, and achievement. So next time you hear or give a label, remember it's not just a word. It's a seed planted deep in the mind, destined to grow and control behavior. What label will you choose to nurture within yourself or others? The power lies in the name we carry, and in the future, it scripts for us. Imagine walking through a door and instantly feeling a shift inside you, as if an invisible switch flips the moment you cross a threshold. This isn't just imagination. Science calls it the boundary effect, where entering or exiting a physical space triggers your brain to activate different mental scripts. You don't consciously decide to behave differently at work, home, or school. Instead, your mind automatically pulls up context-specific memories, emotions, and behaviors tied to that environment, shaping how you act without you even noticing. Researchers have demonstrated that these spatial boundaries function like mental bookmarks, segmenting your experience into distinct episodes. One famous study revealed that simply passing through a doorway causes your brain to flush the current mental context and load a new one, making you forget what you intended to do moments before. This explains the common experience of walking into a room and suddenly forgetting why you came. This psychological architecture helps you switch roles effortlessly: the professional at work, the relaxed friend at home, or the attentive student in class. Each entrance primes a different set of neural patterns and social expectations, triggering your brain to anticipate the behaviors needed in that environment, guiding your performance without conscious effort. Understanding this can unlock powerful self-awareness. If you struggle to focus or stay motivated, changing your environment can reset your mental state and unlock new productivity or relaxation modes. Crossing a threshold is more than a physical act. It is a psychological gateway, a reset button for your brain's performance. The spaces we inhabit shape not only where we are, but who we become in that moment. Imagine handing someone a role, like parent, leader, or victim, and watching as their very identity begins to shift. Science reveals that our minds are astonishingly adaptable. molding themselves to fit the story we are given. This isn't just metaphor, it's a deep psychological reality. When someone steps into a role, their brain rewires expectations, behaviors, and emotions to align with that identity. Social psychologists call this the self-fulfilling prophecy, the idea that what we believe about ourselves shapes what we become. Take a leader, for example. When told they hold authority, they often begin to think and act more confidently, commanding respect and making decisions more decisively. Their neural pathways reinforce these behaviors, solidifying the role. Conversely, someone labeled a victim may unconsciously adopt feelings of helplessness and passivity, limiting their actions and opportunities. Even children absorb roles from family or society, adapting personalities and attitudes accordingly. This malleability demonstrates the mind's incredible power to internalize narratives, creating identities that align with assigned roles. It's a silent, powerful force shaping who we are, proving that the stories we live by can become the blueprints for our very selves. Imagine standing in a dense forest, surrounded by rustling leaves and strange sounds. Your heart races, not because the forest is dangerous, but because your brain struggles to predict what's coming next. Humans have an innate craving for predictability. Our minds are wired to seek patterns, rhythms, and regularity as a way to feel safe in an uncertain world. Neuroscience shows that the brain's threat detection systems become hyperactive when faced with randomness or ambiguity. Yet, when a pattern emerges, even if it's chaotic, your brain finds comfort in knowing what to expect next. This preference for patterns over pure randomness is why we feel calmer watching the waves crash in a steady rhythm rather than erratic splashes. Interestingly, the brain sometimes prefers being wrong in its predictions rather than facing uncertainty at all. This is because uncertainty triggers anxiety and stress hormones, while even incorrect predictions provide a sense of control and reduce fear. Take rituals or routines as examples. Whether it's morning coffee or religious ceremonies, they give the brain a reliable script to follow, soothing the mind. In dangerous or chaotic environments, humans create repetitive chants or dances to impose order, making unpredictability more bearable. This drive for pattern recognition has evolutionary roots. Early humans who could predict animal movements or weather patterns survived better. So, even in chaos, your brain is hardwired to find or create patterns, not because chaos disappears, but because patterns reduce fear, giving you a fragile yet vital anchor in a turbulent world. Imagine hearing the same phrase again and again. At first, it feels like background noise, but soon it lodges itself in your mind as truth. This is the power of repetition. Neuroscience shows that the brain processes familiar information more fluently, and this fluency is mistaken for accuracy. When something is repeated, it becomes easier to recall and feels more believable, regardless of its actual truth. Psychologists call this the illusion of truth effect. Advertisers exploit this by repeating slogans until consumers accept them without question. Politicians do the same, planting ideas so deeply that they seem obvious. Even urban legends and myths survive this way, passed along by word of mouth, gaining credibility with every retelling. The brain's hippocampus, responsible for memory, strengthens the neural pathways linked to repeated information, making it feel real. But repetition also rewires our perception of reality, creating biases that distort judgment. It traps us in cycles of misinformation and belief. Understanding this cognitive bias is crucial in a world flooded with repeated messages. The more we hear something, the less we question it, making repetition one of the most powerful forces shaping what we accept as true. Imagine standing at a crossroads where the fear of losing a small amount outweighs the thrill of gaining something greater. This isn't just human drama, it's a deep-rooted, scientifically proven bias called loss aversion. Our brains are wired to feel the pain of loss nearly twice as intensely as the pleasure of an equivalent gain. Psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky uncovered this in their groundbreaking work on prospect theory. Their experiments revealed that people often make decisions to avoid losses rather than to secure gains, even when the odds or logic suggest a better outcome by taking risks. This imbalance is so powerful, it shapes markets, negotiations, and everyday choices. For example, investors often hold losing stocks too long, hoping to avoid realizing a loss, while selling winning stocks too quickly, fearful that gains will slip away. Similarly, gamblers might quit early to preserve what they have, missing chances for bigger wins. Neuroscience shows that the brain's amygdala, responsible for processing emotions, lights up more intensely during perceived loss than during reward anticipation. This neural wiring pushes us to prioritize safety and avoid risk, sometimes at the cost of opportunity. But understanding this bias can empower us to override it. By consciously weighing potential gains alongside losses and recognizing when fear distorts judgment, we can make more balanced, rational decisions. Loss feels larger than gain because evolution sculpted our minds to survive scarcity and danger. Yet in today's world, this ancient wiring can trap us in cautious patterns unless we learn to reframe our choices and embrace calculated risks. What losses are you avoiding, and what gains might you be missing? Imagine two people laughing together at a joke, a moment of joy that feels fleeting, light, and warm. Now, imagine those same people facing a crisis, a shared pain so intense it breaks through every barrier between them. Science reveals something profound. Shared suffering creates stronger emotional bonds than shared happiness ever can. This is not just a poetic idea, but a psychological reality grounded in human biology and social neuroscience. Research shows that when individuals endure trauma or hardship together, their brains synchronize, releasing oxytocin and other bonding chemicals far more powerfully than during moments of joy. Pain triggers a primal survival instinct that compels humans to connect deeply, seeking comfort and protection from one another. This shared vulnerability accelerates trust, empathy, and emotional intimacy faster than any celebration ever could. Consider soldiers in combat, survivors of natural disasters, or families grieving profound loss. These people often report unbreakable bonds forged in the fire of suffering. Joyful celebrations, while uplifting, rarely produce that immediate, intense connection. Neuroscientists explain that pain's binding power arises because it activates the brain's social pain and reward centers simultaneously, intertwining agony with relief found in connection. This dual activation makes suffering uniquely potent in bonding people, creating emotional ties that can survive the test of time and distance. Understanding this can transform how we view relationships and healing. Embracing vulnerability and facing hardship together may seem daunting, but it creates ties that endure far beyond fleeting happiness. Pain is not merely suffering, it is a bridge, forging connections that joy alone struggles to build. Imagine whispering a secret to someone and instantly forging an invisible bond between you. Science shows that sharing secrets does more than just transfer information. It creates deep emotional ties. When you confide in someone, their brain releases oxytocin, the trust hormone, strengthening feelings of connection and loyalty. But this bond comes with a twist. Secrecy also traps them in silence. They feel special, entrusted with hidden knowledge, yet they cannot share it without risking that fragile trust. This creates a powerful psychological tension, loyalty built on shared silence. The secret becomes a silent contract, binding individuals emotionally and socially. In relationships, this dynamic can deepen intimacy, making people feel uniquely connected and responsible. Yet it can also breed anxiety and fear of exposure, as breaking silence threatens the bond and the trust placed in them. This delicate balance explains why secrets hold such magnetic power over human relationships, quietly shaping alliances and divisions alike. Sharing a secret is not just communication, it's an act that anchors loyalty in the shadows of silence. Imagine a ticking clock counting down, every second amplifying your heartbeat, your breath quickening as time slips away. The presence of a time limit flips a powerful switch in your brain, transforming calm reasoning into a lightning-fast survival mode. Scientific studies show that urgency hijacks the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for thoughtful decision-making, and triggers the amygdala, the brain's alarm center. This shift replaces careful logic with instinctive reactions aimed at immediate survival. Under pressure, people rush, often making impulsive choices they wouldn't consider otherwise. For example, in emergency evacuations, panic sets in as urgency escalates, causing crowd crushes and mistakes despite clear escape routes. Marketers exploit this too. Limited-time offers create a false sense of scarcity, prompting rushed purchases without rational evaluation. Even in daily life, when deadlines loom, our focus narrows sharply, ignoring long-term consequences in favor of quick fixes. This brain hijack is evolutionary. Our ancestors faced real threats demanding split-second action, where hesitation meant danger. But today, this hardwired urgency can lead to errors, anxiety, and stress when applied to modern tasks. Understanding how urgency overrides thought reveals why slowing down, breathing, and reclaiming calm can restore logic and better choices. The illusion of running out of time tricks us into survival instinct, but mastering that switch can turn pressure from enemy to ally. Imagine walking for hours without knowing where you're headed. Surprisingly, your mind cares less about the actual distance traveled and more about whether you believe you're moving forward. Psychological studies reveal that the sense of progress, direction, is what fuels motivation and satisfaction, not the miles covered. Even if you're moving in circles, if your brain perceives forward momentum, you feel success. This is rooted in the brain's reward system, particularly dopamine pathways, which activate when we anticipate achievement or growth. When progress stalls or feels aimless, dopamine levels drop, triggering frustration and despair. In contrast, perceived direction, even if illusory, keeps us engaged and hopeful. For example, in learning or fitness, people persist longer when they see measurable improvements, regardless of how small. Conversely, stagnation, despite distance, kills enthusiasm. This explains why some feel lost despite covering ground, while others thrive in repetitive routines that signal steady advancement. Our brains prioritize meaning over measurement. The narrative of progress shapes our experience more than the reality of distance. So, movement with purpose, real or imagined, sustains us far beyond the physical journey itself. Imagine receiving a gift so beautiful, it seems to come from pure kindness. But beneath the wrapping lies an invisible thread, a subtle obligation that tugs at your mind and behavior. Scientific studies show that gifts rarely exist in a vacuum. They carry an unspoken pressure to reciprocate, accept, or comply. Anthropologists call this the principle of reciprocity, a universal social rule that shapes human interactions. When someone gives you a gift, your brain automatically flags a psychological debt. This isn't mere politeness. It's a deep evolutionary mechanism that fosters cooperation but also controls behavior. Experiments reveal that even small favors or tokens trigger an urge to respond in kind, activating brain areas linked to reward and social bonding. But this reciprocity can also be exploited, subtly manipulating choices and alliances. For instance, salespeople often give freebies, knowing the recipient feels compelled to buy. In relationships, gifts can create power imbalances, where one party gains influence by invoking gratitude or guilt. Neuroscience uncovers that receiving gifts lights up circuits related to social judgment, prompting us to evaluate not just the object, but the giver's expectations. The gift becomes a currency in a silent negotiation, sometimes liberating, sometimes confining. So next time you accept a gift, pause and sense the invisible weight it carries. Behind every ribbon and bow lies a silent contract. What will you offer in return, and how will it shape your choices? Gifts are never just kind. They are transactions of trust, power, and unspoken demands. Imagine walking into a room, knowing someone might be watching you, even if no one actually is. Instantly, your behavior shifts, your posture changes, Your voice alters, and your choices become more cautious or deliberate. This is no coincidence. Science proves that even the mere possibility of being observed fundamentally reshapes how we act. The human brain is wired to respond not only to real scrutiny, but also to imagined eyes, activating complex psychological and neurological systems. Psychologists call this the audience effect, where the presence, or even the belief in the presence, of an observer activates self-monitoring networks in the brain. Studies show people perform differently when they think they're being watched, often improving or modifying actions to fit social expectations. This effect operates even outside conscious control. Subtle changes ripple through our neural circuits, influencing desires, decisions, and even moral judgments, molding behavior from the inside out. The possibility of judgment triggers deep-rooted social survival instincts. Humans crave approval and fear rejection, so our behaviors often align with what we believe others expect, even if those others exist only in our imagination. This internalized gaze shapes everything from how we speak and dress to how we express emotions and navigate ethical choices. It even influences how we tell our stories and craft our identities. Understanding this phenomenon reveals why social environments wield such power over individuals. Even in solitude, we carry an invisible audience within us. Being watched, whether real or imagined, is a psychological mirror, reflecting not only who we are, but who we aspire or dread to become. Imagine being told there's only a handful of something left. Suddenly, it feels more valuable than ever. Science shows that scarcity, even when artificially created, spikes our desire and perception of worth. The human brain is wired to equate rarity with importance. When resources or opportunities seem limited, dopamine floods the reward centers, intensifying craving and urgency. This psychological trick drives everything from luxury brands to flash sales. It's why limited edition or only a few left labels spark immediate action. Even if scarcity is an illusion, our minds react as if it's real, triggering competitive instincts and fear of missing out. Evolutionarily, this made sense. Rare resources meant survival advantage. Today, marketers exploit this deep wiring to make products irresistible. Scarcity creates an emotional pressure cooker where value inflates beyond the object itself. The paradox is clear. What's rare is desired, even if the limitation is artificial, proving how our perception of worth is shaped less by reality and more by the scarcity our brains believe in. Imagine hearing a story that grips you so deeply, it changes how you see the world, even if the facts don't fully add up. This is because our brains are wired to crave meaning and narrative over cold, hard data. Neuroscience shows that storytelling activates multiple brain regions. The sensory cortex lights up as you visualize scenes, the motor cortex simulates actions, and the emotional centers engage as if you're living the experience yourself. Facts alone, stripped of context or emotion, fail to spark this powerful neural dance. Instead, stories create patterns and causal links, weaving information into a memorable framework that feels true. This explains why people often trust compelling stories, even when facts contradict them. In experiments, participants are more likely to remember and believe information presented as a story rather than as isolated statistics or abstract data. Evolutionarily, stories served as survival tools, passing wisdom, warnings, and social norms across generations. The brain's need for coherence and purpose means it prioritizes narratives that resonate emotionally, sometimes at the expense of factual accuracy. This dynamic shapes everything from politics to marketing, where storytelling sways beliefs and decisions far more effectively than raw evidence. Recognizing this can help us question what feels true versus what actually is, reminding us that meaning often triumphs over accuracy in the human mind. Imagine suddenly feeling more powerful or suddenly diminished. How instantly does your body and mind react? Status is a primal signal embedded deep in our brains, shaping every move, word, and thought. Neuroscience shows that even subtle shifts in perceived social rank trigger behavior loops that affect posture, tone, and cognition. When you sense an upgrade in status, your brain releases dopamine and testosterone, boosting confidence. You walk taller, speak louder, and interpret ambiguous situations as fair or favorable. Conversely, a perceived drop floods your system with cortisol, the stress hormone, causing slouched posture, quieter speech, and a heightened sense of injustice. These feedback loops reinforce social hierarchies. Your behavior signals your status to others, who react accordingly, confirming or challenging your place. Psychologists call this the status syndrome, where small cues lock you into cycles of dominance or submission. In daily life, this plays out in workplaces, friendships, and even online interactions. A compliment, a demotion, or a dismissive glance can start these cascades, reshaping how you relate to the world. Status isn't just external. It rewires how you see yourself and everyone around you. Imagine a single spark igniting a wildfire, not of flames, but of fear that races through a crowd faster than any blaze. Science shows that fear spreads through human groups like a contagious virus, moving more swiftly and powerfully than calm or reason ever could. This phenomenon is rooted in our evolutionary survival instincts. Our brains are wired to detect and amplify threats to protect us, triggering a cascade of emotional responses that ripple through social networks. When one person panics, their body language, facial expressions, and vocal tones send unconscious signals to others, activating their own fear responses almost instantly. Studies in social psychology demonstrate how emotional contagion works. Mirror neurons in our brains cause us to mimic and internalize others' feelings, especially negative ones like fear. This leads to rapid collective anxiety that can overwhelm rational thought. For example, during emergencies like stampedes or financial crashes, fear spreads faster than the actual danger, causing reactions that sometimes exacerbate the crisis. Neuroscientific research highlights how the amygdala, the brain's fear center, amplifies these signals, pushing groups into heightened states of alertness and stress. Yet this contagion isn't limited to physical threats. Fear can spread through social media, rumors, and even subtle social cues, shaping public opinion and behavior on a massive scale. Understanding how fear spreads gives us the power to break the chain, cultivating calm, empathy, and clear communication to resist the wildfire of panic. Because in the battle of emotions, calm must travel faster than fear if we hope to survive and thrive together. Imagine a scientist watching a delicate experiment unfold, every gaze and measurement carefully recorded. But here's the twist. Just by observing, the scientist changes the outcome. This isn't magic or superstition. It's a fundamental truth in psychology and physics. Observation alters reality. Humans change their behavior under scrutiny, often without even realizing it, making pure observation impossible. Known as the Hawthorne effect in social sciences, this phenomenon reveals how people's actions shift simply because they know they are being watched. Studies show workers improve productivity under observation, students perform differently when monitored, and even animals alter natural behaviors when observed by researchers. The effect is so pervasive that even the anticipation of being watched can alter natural behavior dramatically, changing outcomes before observation even begins. At the neurological level, being observed triggers self-awareness circuits in the brain, activating monitoring and self-regulation processes. This causes subtle shifts in behavior, often aimed at conforming to expected norms or avoiding judgment. These unconscious adjustments ripple outward, altering decisions, interactions, and even emotional responses. The paradox? The act of watching creates a feedback loop where reality is not objective but shaped by the presence of observers and their expectations, bending the very fabric of what is considered real. Understanding this distortion is crucial, not only in scientific research but in daily life. It explains why people behave differently in public versus private, and why the idea of a neutral observer is often an illusion. Every gaze carries power, shaping reality itself in ways subtle, profound, and unavoidable. Imagine witnessing a string of random events, like missing a bus, then finding a forgotten note, then hearing a song on the radio that feels strangely connected to your day. Your mind instinctively searches for meaning, patterns, and connections, refusing to accept chaos. Science calls this tendency apophenia, the human brain's craving to find order in randomness. Our neural circuits are wired to detect patterns. It's a survival trait from ancient times, helping us predict danger or opportunity. But this powerful instinct often leads us to see significance where none exists. People may believe random events are fate, signs, or even punishment, attributing personal meaning to coincidence. Take the gambler's fallacy, where players think a random streak must end soon, or superstitions where lucky charms seem to influence chance. The brain's reward system lights up when it detects a pattern, reinforcing this illusion. Psychologists say this craving for meaning helps reduce uncertainty and anxiety by creating a sense of control. Yet it can trap us in false narratives, causing us to misinterpret random mishaps as cosmic messages or personal vendettas. This deep-rooted psychological need explains why humans are storytellers by nature. Our minds construct coherence from chaos, seeking purpose even in the meaningless swirl of chance. Imagine setting a clear goal, whether it's running a marathon, finishing a project, or learning a new skill, and suddenly your entire mindset shifts. Your brain rewires itself, prioritizing actions and decisions that push you closer to that target, even if logic says otherwise. Neuroscience reveals that setting goals activates the brain's reward system, particularly the dopamine pathways. Dopamine floods create a sense of motivation and urgency, turning abstract desires into focused drives. This chemical surge tricks your mind into treating the goal as an immediate need, overriding distractions and competing priorities. For example, athletes training for a competition experience heightened focus and endurance simply because their brain anticipates the reward of success. Similarly, in work environments, clear goals enhance productivity by narrowing attention and energizing effort, often bypassing rational cost-benefit analyses. Even when challenges arise or obstacles seem illogical to tackle, the brain's goal-oriented wiring compels persistence. This mechanism evolved to help early humans survive by driving purposeful behavior, whether hunting, gathering, or defending territory. Understanding how goals rewire motivation allows you to harness this power deliberately, setting targets that shape your priorities and fuel unstoppable momentum toward what truly matters. Imagine someone speaking with unwavering certainty, even if they are wrong. Confidence holds a strange power over our minds. Psychology reveals that bold speech activates a primal bias. People tend to trust confident voices more than cautious or hesitant ones, even when evidence contradicts them. This is because confidence signals competence and authority, triggering social acceptance and obedience. The brain's mirror neuron system responds to confident cues by aligning beliefs and behaviors, reinforcing trust. In social spaces, confidence often overrides facts. Studies show that during debates or negotiations, the most confident speaker is perceived as more credible, regardless of truth. This effect fuels misinformation, charismatic leaders, and even everyday lies. Authority amplifies this. When a confident figure asserts something, people suspend doubt to maintain social cohesion. This dynamic shapes politics, marketing, and media, where persuasion often matters more than accuracy. Understanding this reveals why truth alone isn't enough. How we say things with certainty shapes reality. Imagine walking into a crowded room and instantly feeling calmer when you spot a familiar face. This reaction isn't just comfort, it's a deep psychological truth. Humans instinctively trust what they've seen before, even without conscious reason. Repetition builds familiarity, and familiarity breeds comfort, lowering our defenses in ways science has repeatedly proven. This effect is known as the mere exposure effect, first demonstrated by psychologist Robert Zayance. Simply encountering a stimulus repeatedly, whether a face, a voice, or an idea, increases our positive feelings toward it. Our brains treat familiarity as a signal of safety, reducing fear and suspicion. Neurologically, the amygdala, which processes fear and threat, shows less activity when we see familiar faces, while the reward centers light up, creating feelings of ease and trust. This automatic response helps humans quickly identify allies and navigate complex social environments. For example, brands leverage this by repeating logos and jingles, making consumers feel more comfortable and likely to buy. Socially, we tend to form stronger bonds with people who are present regularly, even if we barely know them. However, this bias can be exploited, making us vulnerable to manipulation or blind to danger simply because something or someone feels familiar. So next time you feel an unshakable trust or comfort, remember, it might be the invisible power of repetition shaping your mind. Familiarity feels safe, but awareness ensures it doesn't cloud judgment. What familiar faces or ideas have quietly lowered your guard? Imagine stepping into a grand cathedral, the scent of incense lingering in the air, the hush of reverent silence wrapping around you. In this sacred space, your sense of right and wrong sharpens, and ethical behavior often rises. Now, contrast that with the flashing lights and roaring sounds of a casino, where risk and chance dominate and moral boundaries blur. This is no accident. Scientific studies show that location profoundly influences how people behave morally. Context is not just a backdrop. It actively shapes conscience and choice. Research in environmental psychology reveals that physical surroundings trigger different mental frameworks and social norms. In places like churches, the symbolic weight of tradition, ritual, and community awareness activates brain areas tied to empathy, guilt, and self-control. These cues remind individuals of moral standards and social expectations, encouraging honesty, generosity, and kindness toward others. Conversely, casinos create an environment saturated with ambiguity, noise, and temptation. The atmosphere fosters a mindset focused on self-interest, risk-taking, and bending rules, making ethical lapses more likely. People feel less socially accountable when surrounded by chaos and distraction, often prioritizing immediate gain over long-term values, allowing conscience to slip. This phenomenon, how place guides morality, illustrates the immense power of environment in steering human behavior. It's why changing a context can reset ethical compasses, nudging actions toward integrity or indulgence. Recognizing this influence helps us understand not just what we do, but why, and how to design spaces that encourage the best in us. Imagine revealing a moment of weakness, a crack in your armor, and feeling others draw closer instead of turning away. Science reveals that vulnerability is a powerful magnet for trust and connection. When someone shares their imperfections or fears, it signals authenticity in a world often masked by pretense. Neuroscientific studies show that witnessing genuine vulnerability activates the brain's empathy circuits, releasing oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which fosters feelings of closeness and safety. In social groups, vulnerability breaks down barriers, inviting others to lower their defenses and respond with compassion. Consider how confessions or personal stories in friendships deepen bonds more than polished facades ever could. Psychologists highlight that perfect personas trigger skepticism or distance, while flaws humanize and invite acceptance. Vulnerability communicates honesty, an unspoken promise that what you see is real. This honest exposure can be risky, but it cultivates loyalty and intimacy that superficial strength cannot. In essence, imperfection is the bridge connecting isolated individuals, reminding us that true trust grows not from strength alone, but from the courage to be openly human. Imagine flipping through old photographs or hearing a song from your childhood, and suddenly a warm, comforting wave washes over you. This feeling, nostalgia, is more than sentimental longing. It's a powerful emotional state that softens judgment and reshapes perception. Neuroscience reveals that nostalgia activates brain regions linked to emotion and reward, flooding the mind with positive feelings that overshadow critical analysis. When nostalgic, people become more forgiving, generous, and open-minded because the emotional glow creates a bias that tints memories with warmth, even rewriting unpleasant details. This memory bias doesn't just influence personal feelings, it extends to how we judge others and even public policies. Studies show voters feeling nostalgic are more likely to support leaders or decisions associated with better times, regardless of current facts or logic. Politicians and marketers tap into this effect by invoking nostalgia, softening resistance, and creating emotional loyalty. Nostalgia's power lies in its ability to connect us to identity and belonging, making us temporarily prioritize emotion over reason. Recognizing how nostalgia colors judgment helps us balance heartfelt memories with clear-eyed decision-making, so we don't let the past's comforting haze cloud our present truth. Imagine standing in a crowd where something wrong is happening, yet no one steps forward. This is the psychology of diluted guilt, where responsibility spreads thin across many individuals. Studies in social psychology reveal the diffusion of responsibility effect. The larger the group, the less each person feels accountable. This dilution lowers personal guilt and increases the likelihood of harmful actions being ignored or even committed. In experiments like the infamous bystander effect, people were far less likely to help when others were present, assuming someone else would act. This crowd mentality weakens moral judgment and empathy, allowing unethical behavior to flourish unnoticed. It explains how groups enable cruelty, whether in mobs, corporate decisions, or online communities, where individual voices dissolve into collective silence. The brain's empathy circuits can switch off when blame is shared, dulling emotional responses. This psychological armor makes it easier to do harm without the crushing weight of personal guilt. Understanding this reveals a dark truth. Collective presence can mask individual conscience, making group dynamics a powerful force in human morality. Imagine a simple command from an authority figure instantly shifting your behavior, even when you might disagree internally. This response isn't just social conditioning, it's wired into our biology. Obedience is pre-installed, a survival mechanism shaped by millions of years of evolution to maintain group cohesion and safety. Psychologists like Stanley Milgram famously demonstrated this in his obedience experiments, where ordinary people followed orders to harm others simply because an authority told them to. This compliance wasn't driven by belief, but by an ingrained impulse to obey authority as a shortcut to safety and belonging. Neuroscience reveals that the brain's reward and fear circuits activate when we encounter authority cues, uniforms, titles, or commands, triggering a primal reflex to comply. This reflex evolved because, in ancestral environments, defying leaders or elders risked social exclusion or violence, which could mean death. At the same time, obedience enables complex societies to function smoothly by ensuring coordination and reducing conflict. Yet this pre-installed obedience can also be dangerous, enabling abuses of power and blind conformity. Understanding that obedience is a biological program helps us recognize when to question and when to comply, reclaiming conscious choice over automatic submission. The challenge is to balance respect for authority with critical thinking, because survival once meant obedience, but today it demands awareness. How often do you obey without question, driven by ancient wiring rather than conscious choice? Imagine walking into a crowded room and suddenly becoming hyper-aware, not just of others, but of yourself. Your posture shifts, your expressions change, even your thoughts adapt as if you're seeing yourself through the eyes of everyone present. This phenomenon goes beyond social anxiety. It unveils a profound truth about human identity. We become what we believe others see. Identity is not fixed. It is a fluid reflection shaped continuously by attention, perception, and social feedback. Psychologists call this the looking glass self, a concept introduced by Charles Horton Cooley, who explained that our self-image is formed through imagining how others perceive us. Neuroscience supports this by showing that brain regions responsible for self-awareness and social cognition light up intensely when we anticipate scrutiny. This neurological activation drives us to adapt not only our external behavior, but also our internal narratives, reshaping who we think we are to align with the perceived gaze. This mirroring effect means identity is dynamic and constantly edited by the social environment. When attention focuses on us, whether judgmental or admiring, we adjust not just our actions, but our core sense of self. Our values, confidence, and fears mirror the eyes upon us. The feedback loop created by attention sculpts our personality moment to moment, continuously rewriting our inner story. Understanding this phenomenon reveals why social contexts wield immense power over self-concept. The gaze of the room isn't merely observation, it's a transformative force, blurring the lines between who we think we are and who others help us become, shaping us in ways subtle yet profound. Imagine how quickly people rally together when faced with a shared enemy. How common hatred can forge bonds more swiftly than shared dreams or ideals. Science reveals that the emotion of outrage activates ancient brain circuits tied to group identity and survival, sparking fierce tribal loyalty almost instantly. Neuroscientific studies show that when individuals focus on a common adversary, the brain releases stress hormones and dopamine, heightening alertness and bonding simultaneously. This primal reaction helped early humans survive threats by uniting against danger. Today, social psychologists observe that groups united by opposition often display stronger cohesion than those bound by positive values alone. Outrage sharpens in-group versus out-group distinctions, intensifying loyalty through fear and anger. Political campaigns, social movements, and even everyday conflicts harness this dynamic. Shared enemies create a powerful us versus them mentality that accelerates trust and cooperation within the group. Yet, while this rapid bonding is effective, it often deepens divisions, showing how hatred can be a double-edged sword, uniting some while fracturing broader society. The fierce ties born of common foes reveal how our minds prioritize survival through alliance, even if it means fueling conflict. Imagine catching yourself harshly judging someone for a flaw, only to realize deep inside that same flaw lives within you. This is the silent force of projection, a psychological defense where we unconsciously accuse others of traits or feelings we refuse to face in ourselves. The brain prefers this external focus because looking inward triggers discomfort, vulnerability, and cognitive dissonance. Projection creates a comforting illusion, shifting blame outward and sparing the self from painful self-examination. Neuroscience shows that the prefrontal cortex, responsible for self-reflection, often shuts down under stress, while emotion-driven parts like the amygdala amplify defensive reactions. This imbalance makes it easier to judge others than to confront our own imperfections. Projection can distort reality, fueling conflicts, misunderstandings, and fractured relationships. For example, someone who fears their own anger might accuse others of being aggressive, deflecting attention from their inner turmoil. Recognizing projection requires courage to turn the gaze inward, embracing uncomfortable truths for personal growth. By acknowledging this mental habit, we free ourselves from illusion, fostering honesty, empathy, and deeper connection. Projection hides truth, but awareness reveals it. Imagine wanting something more the moment you're told you can't have it. This is the paradox of desire. Barriers don't reduce longing, they amplify it. Psychological research explains this as the reactance effect, where people respond to restrictions by wanting the forbidden object even more. When something becomes unreachable, the brain's reward system lights up with heightened anticipation, making desire sharper and more intense. Rejection and limitation trigger a primal hunger, rooted in our evolutionary past. Scarcity signals value, so when access is blocked, the forbidden becomes irresistible. This is why forbidden fruits taste sweeter, and why prohibitions often backfire. The dopamine-driven craving intensifies because the mind equates difficulty with worthiness, not truth. But this isn't about moral rightness, it's about cognitive bias. The mind rewires longing based on availability, not actual preference. Whether it's a person, an idea, or an object, the harder it is to reach, the stronger our yearning grows. Understanding this reveals why boundaries can paradoxically fuel obsession rather than extinguish it. Imagine facing a mountain of tasks, your mind swirling with anxiety and uncertainty. Now picture a simple checklist, lines and boxes that bring order to chaos. This isn't just organization, it's a scientifically proven way to reduce anxiety by creating the illusion of control when life feels unpredictable. Psychologists find that uncertainty triggers the brain's stress response, flooding us with cortisol and activating the amygdala, the center of fear and anxiety. When things feel out of control, the mind searches desperately for stability. Enter the checklist, a tool that breaks overwhelming tasks into manageable steps, giving structure and clarity. Studies show that even the act of writing down tasks reduces cognitive load, freeing mental resources and lowering stress hormones. Neurologically, this structure engages the prefrontal cortex, the brain's executive center, which helps regulate emotions and restore calm. By visualizing progress, checklists foster a sense of accomplishment, further soothing anxiety. For example, surgeons and pilots rely on checklists to reduce errors and calm nerves under pressure. Even everyday people find that listing chores or goals creates a mental roadmap, transforming anxiety into focused action. Though the control is partly an illusion, its effects are real. Peace replaces panic, and order tames chaos. So next time anxiety strikes, reach for a checklist. It's a simple key to unlock calm in the storm of uncertainty. Imagine overhearing whispers in a crowded room, conversations buzzing about someone's actions or choices. Gossip isn't just idle chatter, it's a powerful social tool that enforces order within communities. Beyond mere entertainment, gossip acts as an informal regulatory system, shaping behavior by rewarding conformity and punishing deviation through reputation and social standing. Scientific studies show that gossip plays a crucial role in human societies by spreading vital information about who can be trusted and who might harm the group. When someone breaks social norms, gossip circulates quickly, signaling disapproval and warning others. This social pressure nudges individuals toward cooperation, honesty, and shared values, maintaining group harmony and cohesion. It is one of the oldest and most effective methods societies use to regulate behavior without formal laws or official punishments. At the neurological level, gossip activates brain areas tied to social cognition and emotional processing, reinforcing the importance of reputation and belonging. Fear of negative talk drives many to self-regulate, adjusting behavior to avoid becoming the subject of harmful rumors or exclusion from social circles. Understanding gossip as a form of social control reveals how communities maintain order without formal rules or enforcement mechanisms. It's a dynamic system where words wield immense power, shaping who belongs, who is trusted, and who risks social exile. Gossip enforces more than conversation. It preserves the social fabric itself, binding communities through shared values, consequences, and collective vigilance. Imagine focusing all your energy on helping others, fixing their problems, while quietly sidestepping your own struggles. Science reveals this is a common psychological pattern. When we fix others, it often shields us from confronting our own inner conflicts. Psychologists call this projection and displacement, where attention is diverted outward to avoid uncomfortable self-reflection. Helping someone can provide a sense of control and purpose, soothing feelings of vulnerability or helplessness about one's own life. Neurobiologically, acts of caregiving trigger dopamine and oxytocin release, giving a rewarding feeling that distracts from personal pain. For many, the messiness of self-examination is daunting. Focusing on others' issues feels safer, simpler, and more manageable. This coping mechanism, while sometimes altruistic, can prevent true healing by masking unresolved emotions or trauma. It also risks creating codependent relationships where one's identity is tied to rescuing others instead of fostering self-growth. Understanding this dynamic invites us to balance compassion with self-awareness, recognizing that while fixing others can feel secure, real courage lies in facing our own shadows. Imagine opening a book or watching a film, and within the first few moments, you're hooked. Your mind sets the stage for everything that follows. The first steps in any story don't just introduce characters or settings, they frame the entire narrative, shaping your expectations, emotions, and judgments. Neuroscience shows that the brain forms mental models early on, using initial information as a blueprint to interpret subsequent events. This framing effect means that a story's opening colors how you perceive twists, motives, and outcomes, often making it hard to change your initial impression later. For example, a protagonist introduced as heroic will be forgiven small mistakes, while a shadowy start may cast lasting doubt. Advertisers and filmmakers exploit this by crafting compelling openings that prime audiences to feel a certain way, guiding attention and memory. Evolutionarily, this rapid narrative framing helped humans quickly assess friend from foe and make survival decisions. Understanding that first steps define stories empowers you to craft beginnings that control perception, build suspense, and create lasting impact. Because in every tale, the opening is more than a start. It's the key that unlocks the entire journey. Imagine lying down after a long day, yet sleep refuses to come. This delay isn't just physical. Sleep obeys the mind's deepest signals. Neuroscience shows that our unconscious mind acts as a vigilant gatekeeper, allowing the body to relax only when it feels safe. The brain constantly monitors the environment for threats, and if danger lurks, even subtly, sleep is postponed. The amygdala, responsible for fear responses, communicates with the hypothalamus to regulate alertness. In hostile or unfamiliar settings, this network keeps the body on edge, releasing stress hormones like cortisol. These chemicals suppress the onset of sleep, prioritizing survival over rest. Conversely, in environments perceived as secure, the brain lowers defenses, letting melatonin and other sleep hormones rise, enabling the body to surrender to rest. This explains why people sleep better in familiar places and struggle in new or stressful environments. The unconscious mind holds the key, deciding when it's safe enough to let go. Understanding this connection between psychology and sleep unlocks the mystery of restless nights and reveals how deeply our minds govern even the most basic needs. Imagine countless tiny choices you make every day, brushing your teeth, checking your phone, brewing coffee, so small they barely register. Yet these micro-decisions quietly build habits that grow into rituals, subtly shaping your identity and belief systems beneath conscious awareness. Science reveals that habits form when the brain creates automatic neural pathways triggered by specific cues in our environment. These routines save mental energy, freeing the conscious mind for complex thinking. But over time, they embed themselves so deeply that they influence how we see the world and ourselves. For instance, morning rituals like journaling or meditation can cultivate mindfulness and positivity, while repeated negative behaviors reinforce limiting beliefs and stress. Psychologists call this chunking, where the brain groups actions into patterns, making them effortless but powerful. Neuroscientific studies show that the basal ganglia, a brain region key for habit formation, governs these unconscious routines. This means much of our behavior, and even our worldview, is sculpted by seemingly insignificant daily details. The hidden danger is complacency. Unaware of these habits, we might unknowingly reinforce harmful beliefs or patterns. But awareness is the first step to rewiring. Tiny intentional changes can cascade into profound transformation. So pay attention to your micro-decisions. They are the secret architects of your mind. What tiny habit is quietly defining who you are? Imagine hearing a song for the first time. Strange, unfamiliar, even annoying. But after the 5th or 10th listen, something changes. That same tune starts to feel comforting, even beloved. This phenomenon isn't just a quirk of music, it's a fundamental part of how our brains build trust and attachment. Repetition breeds familiarity, and familiarity feels like truth. Psychologists call this the mere exposure effect, a well-documented cognitive bias where people develop a preference for things simply because they encounter them repeatedly. This effect applies to faces, ideas, brands, and even social groups. The brain's repeated exposure creates neural pathways that reinforce comfort and reduce uncertainty, gradually shaping perception and attitude. Neurologically, repeated stimuli activate reward circuits, like the dopamine system, while simultaneously dampening the brain's threat response. This neurological dance makes the familiar feel safe, reliable, and trustworthy. That's why jingles, logos, and slogans become powerful tools in advertising, embedding themselves into our consciousness. Similarly, first impressions can evolve positively as repetition rewires our internal response. Yet this effect can also lead us to cling to falsehoods or flawed beliefs simply because they are repeated often enough. Familiarity is not always truth, but the mind often confuses the two, mistaking repetition for validation. Understanding repetition's power helps us see why habits form, why cultural norms persist, and why breaking free from ingrained ideas can be so difficult. The more we are exposed to something, the more our brains weave it into our sense of reality, making familiarity an invisible architect of trust and identity. Imagine the crushing weight of boredom settling in, a lack of stimulation so deep it gnaws at the mind. Science shows that when our brains crave novelty but find none, a restless energy builds, sometimes erupting into destructive behavior. Psychologists explain that boredom is not just an absence of activity, but a signal that urges us to seek meaning and engagement. Without healthy outlets, this urge can turn dark. People might provoke conflicts, rebel against norms, or even start literal fires to break the monotony. Neurologically, boredom triggers decreased dopamine activity, which leads to frustration and risk-taking as the brain hunts for stimulation. Studies link prolonged boredom to increased aggression and impulsivity, showing why prisons often face riots or why neglected youth may turn to vandalism. This destructive response is a desperate attempt to inject excitement and regain a sense of control. Boredom, then, becomes a silent tinderbox, quiet at first, but capable of igniting chaos when ignored. Understanding this reveals how vital engagement and meaningful challenges are to social stability and individual well-being. Imagine sharing a favor with a close friend, helping them move or lending an ear, and everything feels natural, effortless, and warm. Now, imagine if money suddenly enters the picture. That same favor starts to carry an invisible price tag, altering the relationship's fabric. When transactions creep into personal bonds, the dynamic shifts fundamentally. Neuroscience and social psychology reveal that relationships thrive on trust, reciprocity, and emotional connection. Introducing money activates different brain circuits associated with calculation, fairness, and sometimes suspicion, replacing pure goodwill with cost-benefit analysis. This subtle change creates distance. Every act becomes a negotiation, eroding the free flow of kindness. Even small exchanges can plant seeds of resentment or obligation, as favors once given freely now feel weighed and measured. Studies show that in friendships or family ties, mixing finances often leads to tension, misunderstanding, and reduced intimacy. This doesn't mean money always ruins bonds, but it shifts priorities from emotional closeness toward transactional fairness. Understanding how transactions change intimacy helps us protect the delicate balance of human connection, reminding us that some gifts are best given without a price. Because when money enters, the heart's currency becomes harder to spend. Imagine hearing a story that paints a group as dangerous or evil. Suddenly, actions once unthinkable become justified, even necessary. This is the terrifying power of narratives. They shape our moral compass by framing who is friend and who is foe. Cognitive psychology shows that once a story labels others as threats, Our brains activate fear and aggression circuits, making cruelty feel not only acceptable, but righteous. Throughout history, propaganda and ideology have weaponized narratives to excuse horrors, from wars to social oppression. When we accept a story that dehumanizes, empathy shuts down, replaced by justification for violence. This process rewires moral judgment, allowing ordinary people to commit extraordinary cruelty under the guise of protection or justice. Neuroscientific studies reveal that stories create mental models, coloring perception and decision-making. Once entrenched, these frames are hard to dismantle, perpetuating cycles of hatred and violence. Understanding the power of narrative warns us how words can sanction darkness, urging vigilance in what stories we choose to believe and spread. Imagine walking into a chilly room and suddenly feeling your thoughts sharpen, your emotions cool, and your judgments turn more objective. Scientific research shows that colder temperatures don't just affect our bodies, they profoundly influence our minds, reducing emotional bias and making us feel fairer. Psychologists have found that physical coldness triggers a mental state often described as cold cognition, where reasoning takes precedence over feelings. In one study, participants exposed to cooler environments made more impartial decisions, less swayed by emotional appeals or personal biases. Neurologically, cold temperatures seem to dampen activity in the brain's limbic system, the emotional center, while enhancing the prefrontal cortex's role in logical thinking and self-control. This shift promotes fairness and detachment. Even the simple act of holding a cold object, like an iced drink, can increase perceptions of social distance and impartiality. This is why negotiations in cooler settings often result in more balanced outcomes. However, too much cold can trigger discomfort or stress, which may cloud judgment. The key lies in moderate coldness, a subtle environmental cue that tempers impulsive decisions. So next time you face a tough choice, consider adjusting your surroundings. Sometimes, chilling out literally clears the mind, letting objectivity prevail over emotion. How might a cooler perspective change the way you judge people or situations? Imagine participating in a ritual, lighting a candle, chanting words, or performing a repeated gesture. At first, these actions may feel mechanical or even empty, disconnected from any true belief. But over time, something remarkable happens. Belief grows directly from behavior. We don't always act because we believe. Often, we believe because we acted. Ritual doesn't just express faith, it creates and reinforces it, weaving conviction into the very fabric of our minds. Psychologists call this phenomenon cognitive dissonance, where our minds seek harmony by aligning thoughts and actions to reduce internal conflict. When we engage in ritualized behavior, even without full conviction, the brain begins to adjust our beliefs to justify what we do. This feedback loop solidifies faith, making it more vivid, sincere, and deeply personal. Anthropologists have long observed that rituals bind communities by providing shared experiences that shape collective belief and social cohesion. Neuroscience reveals that repeated ritual activates brain regions linked to emotion, memory, and reward, embedding belief deeply within our neural circuits and transforming abstract ideas into visceral realities. This process is why rituals persist across time and cultures, shaping not only personal conviction, but also collective identity. Rituals transform thought into feeling, belief into experience, creating a powerful feedback system where behavior and faith continually reinforce each other. This explains why ritual is central across cultures and religions worldwide. It anchors belief not just in ideas, but in the body and mind, turning faith into lived experience. Understanding ritual's power shows how behavior and faith are intertwined in a dynamic dance, one shaping the other over and over again. Imagine stepping into a room and instantly trusting someone simply because they look clean and well-groomed. Science reveals that physical cleanliness is deeply intertwined with our perceptions of morality. Psychologists call this the cleanliness-morality link, a subconscious bias where people associate being physically clean with being morally pure. Studies show that when individuals see someone tidy and hygienic, their brains activate reward centers linked to trust and positive judgment. This connection stems from ancient evolutionary roots, where cleanliness signaled health, social order, and reliability. For example, experiments reveal that people who wash their hands after moral dilemmas feel relieved, as if physically cleansing themselves of guilt. Advertisers and politicians exploit this bias, using imagery of purity and cleanliness to imply honesty or virtue. This unconscious association influences everything from hiring decisions to courtroom judgments. Cleanliness becomes more than hygiene. It's a powerful social cue signaling character, shaping how we trust and judge others without a word spoken. Imagine hearing a soft whisper in a crowded room. Suddenly, your attention sharpens, your curiosity spikes, and you lean in closer to catch every word. This subtle dynamic reveals a powerful truth. Whispers create curiosity far more effectively than loud declarations. Neuroscience explains that when information is delivered quietly or hinted at, the brain's attention networks engage more deeply, triggering a state of heightened focus and anticipation. The mysterious, incomplete nature of whispers activates the brain's prediction centers, compelling you to fill in the gaps and seek more. This is why secrets captivate us. They promise hidden knowledge and exclusive insight, sparking dopamine release linked to reward and pleasure. Advertisers, storytellers, and even social groups harness this effect, using hushed tones or cryptic messages to draw people in. Evolutionarily, paying close attention to subtle sounds or secrets meant the difference between safety and danger. Whispers tap into this ancient wiring, making the quieter the truth, the more your brain leans forward, hungry to understand. So next time you want to captivate, remember, silence and subtlety can speak louder than a shout. Imagine feeling the pain of others so deeply it shapes your every choice. This isn't just nurture, but nature too. Scientific research reveals that compassion and empathy are influenced by our genes, wiring some individuals to feel more intensely. Variations in genes related to oxytocin and serotonin receptors affect how the brain processes social cues and emotional pain. Twin studies show empathy levels often run in families, suggesting inheritance plays a crucial role. Certain gene variants enhance connectivity in brain regions like the anterior insula and anterior cingulate cortex, areas key to feeling others' emotions. This biological wiring means that empathy isn't always a conscious choice. It can be encoded in our DNA. However, genetics only set the foundation. Environment and experience modulate how compassion expresses itself, but the inherited sensitivity provides a powerful lens shaping our moral compass. Understanding this biological basis deepens appreciation for human diversity and challenges assumptions about willpower in kindness. Imagine a painting that speaks the words your mind can't find, or a melody that echoes feelings too deep for language. Art has a unique power. It reveals the unspoken by bypassing our mental defenses, letting hidden emotions and truths flow freely through color, sound, and metaphor. Psychologists understand this through the lens of expressive therapy, where creative expression unlocks subconscious material. When words fail, art accesses the emotional brain, the limbic system, circumventing the logical filters of the prefrontal cortex that often suppress painful or complex feelings. Neuroscience shows that engaging with or creating art activates brain regions involved in emotion, memory, and self-reflection, helping individuals process trauma, anxiety, or joy in a nonverbal way. This bypass of defense mechanisms allows what is repressed to surface gently without triggering resistance. For example, in therapy, patients who struggle to articulate trauma often communicate through drawings or music, revealing inner conflicts and healing pathways. Similarly, artists throughout history have expressed societal taboos, cultural grief, or personal struggle that spoken language could not contain. Art becomes a bridge between the conscious and unconscious, offering a safe container for the ineffable. It leaks what can't be said, making visible the invisible and heard the silent. So when words fall short, turn to creativity. It speaks your hidden truths. What is your art whispering beneath the surface? Imagine wrestling with a question that feels too tangled to solve. Your mind craves relief, longing for a simple answer, something clear, concise, and easy to hold on to. This craving isn't just comfort-seeking. It's wired deep in your brain's desire for efficiency and certainty. Simplicity feels true because complex answers feel wrong, even when the simple version is false. Cognitive science explains this with the principle of cognitive ease. The brain prefers information that is easy to process. When presented with complexity, our mental effort spikes, triggering discomfort, frustration, and skepticism. So we often settle for shortcuts, heuristics, that simplify reality, even if they distort or obscure it. This is why myths, stereotypes, and oversimplifications thrive across cultures and history. They offer clear narratives that our brains quickly accept, reducing uncertainty and anxiety in a confusing world. Yet this comfort comes at a cost, as it blinds us to nuance, depth, and uncomfortable truths. Neurologically, simplified information activates reward pathways in the brain, reinforcing our preference for it. This explains why complex scientific truths, challenging emotions, or moral ambiguities are often resisted or denied. They demand more cognitive effort than our brains wish to expend. Understanding our brain's bias toward simplicity reveals why critical thinking and intellectual humility require conscious effort to push beyond easy answers and embrace complexity. It's a mental discipline against the seductive allure of simplicity's deceptive ease, reminding us that truth is often more complicated than it seems. Only by resisting this urge can we approach real understanding. Imagine encountering a face, logo, or building that feels instantly trustworthy, its perfect symmetry somehow soothing your mind. Science reveals that humans are hardwired to trust geometry, especially symmetry, more than we consciously realize. Our brains evolved to associate symmetry with health, balance, and order, key indicators of reliability and fitness. Facial symmetry, for instance, signals genetic health, which is why symmetrical faces are often perceived as more attractive and trustworthy. Neurological studies show that symmetrical patterns activate reward centers, creating a subconscious sense of comfort and safety. In branding and architecture, balanced designs evoke professionalism and stability, influencing decisions without overt awareness. Even infants display a preference for symmetrical shapes, highlighting its deep evolutionary roots. This instinctive trust in geometry shapes everything from first impressions to complex social judgments, proving that beneath our conscious thought lies an ancient algorithm favoring balance, a silent signal that order equals credibility. Imagine stepping into a pristine hotel room after a long journey, or feeling the fresh cascade of a morning shower washing away yesterday's worries. These moments of new beginnings create what psychologists call a clean slate, a mental reset that opens space for honesty and vulnerability. Neuroscience shows that familiar, cluttered environments activate habitual thought patterns and self-protection circuits, making us guarded and less likely to reveal hidden truths. In contrast, new or neutral settings reduce mental noise and judgment, calming the amygdala, the brain's fear center, and encouraging openness. This is why people often confess secrets during vacations or feel more honest in hotel rooms far from their daily routines. The brain interprets these clean slates as opportunities for reinvention, shedding old identities and defenses. Rituals like showers or changing locations trigger dopamine and serotonin release, enhancing mood and trust, lowering barriers to confession. Understanding this can deepen our appreciation for why fresh starts foster connection and reveal hidden parts of ourselves. Clean slates invite confessions because they offer safe ground, a blank canvas where truth feels freer to emerge beyond the clutter of everyday life. Imagine walking into a room stripped of clutter, everything in its place, surfaces bare, spaces open. This minimalism sends a powerful message: control. Modern psychology reveals that owning less and maintaining a clean environment signals discipline, order, and authority. It projects an image of mastery over chaos, even if the disorder has simply been hidden or postponed. Our brains interpret organized spaces as reflections of inner stability. A minimalist aesthetic triggers perceptions of competence and self-regulation. Socially, people who project control through their surroundings command respect and trust, as neatness suggests predictability and reliability. This symbolic language of order influences first impressions and ongoing relationships. Yet minimalism can be a facade. The absence of clutter might mask unresolved chaos elsewhere, emotional or practical. Still, the power of a clean room lies in its ability to communicate control without words. In a world overwhelmed by distractions, minimalism offers a psychological anchor, shaping how others perceive us and how we perceive ourselves. Imagine the relief you feel when completing a puzzle, even a simple or meaningless one. Science reveals that this feeling is more than satisfaction. Solving puzzles soothes anxiety by giving our brains a sense of order and control over the unknown. Psychologists explain this through the concept of closure, where the brain strives to resolve ambiguity and uncertainty. Uncertainty triggers stress and fear because the brain's predictive systems struggle without clear answers. Completing puzzles feeds this need, providing a momentary calm by delivering a finished, comprehensible outcome. Neuroscience shows that puzzle solving activates the brain's reward centers, releasing dopamine, a neurotransmitter linked to pleasure and motivation. This dopamine surge not only makes problem-solving enjoyable, but also counteracts anxiety's grip. Even when puzzles are arbitrary or nonsensical, the process of pattern recognition and completion calms the amygdala, the brain's fear hub, reducing feelings of threat. This is why activities like crosswords, Sudoku, or even fidget toys help people manage stress and focus. Our minds crave completion because it transforms chaos into clarity. In a world full of uncertainty, puzzles are tiny islands of control, soothing fear through resolution. So next time anxiety mounts, reach for a puzzle. Its power lies not in the challenge itself, but in the brain's hunger to close the gaps of the unknown. What puzzle will you solve today to calm your mind? Imagine noticing a sudden drop, a stock falling, a follower count slipping, or sales declining. Your attention sharpens immediately. Alarm bells ring louder. This isn't just instinct. Science shows our brains react more intensely to losses than to equivalent gains. Decline draws attention faster and triggers stronger emotional responses than steady progress ever does. Behavioral economics calls this loss aversion, the principle that losses hurt about twice as much as gains feel good. Our survival wiring prioritizes avoiding threats, so a decline sparks urgency and often panic, compelling rapid action. This urgency is rooted deep in our evolutionary past, where missing a resource or facing danger could mean life or death. Meanwhile, slow, steady gains breed complacency rather than trust, making progress feel less urgent or noticeable. People tend to underestimate gradual improvements, focusing instead on sudden setbacks. This asymmetry skews decision-making in everything from financial markets, where crashes trigger sell-offs, to social dynamics, where negative news spreads faster than positive updates. Neurologically, the brain's threat detection centers, like the amygdala, light up during loss, activating stress and heightened alertness. In contrast, reward circuits engaged by gains produce milder, more gradual responses. This imbalance influences how we process information and react emotionally. Understanding this can explain why crises escalate quickly, while recovery feels slow. It highlights the psychological weight of decline and why managing perceptions during downturns is crucial for leadership and communication. Recognizing loss aversion helps us make better decisions by balancing fear with patience. Imagine seeing a bright balloon gently drifting upwards, catching your gaze and holding it captive for a moment. This simple floating object taps into something deeply human, a symbol of innocence, hope, and silent wishes we dare not speak aloud. Science shows that our eyes naturally follow small, rising things because they mimic the intangible rise of our own desires and dreams. Psychologists suggest that balloons trigger subconscious associations with childhood and freedom, evoking feelings of nostalgia and optimism. Neurologically, watching an object ascend engages our brain's reward pathways, stirring gentle excitement and curiosity. This is why balloons are often present at celebrations, symbolizing aspirations taking flight. In art and literature, they represent fragile hope amid uncertainty, a visual metaphor for the delicate wishes we hold inside. Studies in visual attention demonstrate that humans are wired to track moving, unpredictable objects, especially those rising, perhaps an evolutionary trait linked to vigilance and anticipation. When we see a balloon float away, it's as if we momentarily connect with our own suppressed hopes, following their journey with quiet longing. This powerful, silent symbolism reveals how something as simple as a balloon can carry profound emotional weight, lifting our spirits toward possibilities we're afraid to voice but yearn to embrace. Imagine seeing a stranger step into a room wearing a crisp uniform. The moment their clothes change, so does how your brain perceives them. Suddenly, they seem smarter, more authoritative, or even more intimidating without you knowing why. This is the subtle but powerful influence of uniforms on human perception. Scientific research reveals that uniforms act as visual symbols, triggering automatic cognitive biases deep in our brains. The brain's pattern recognition systems link uniforms with order, expertise, or power, shaped by cultural conditioning and evolutionary survival instincts. Studies have shown that people wearing uniforms are judged more competent and trustworthy simply because of their attire, regardless of their actual abilities. For example, experiments where participants interacted with individuals dressed as police officers versus casual clothes found they responded with more respect, compliance, or fear to the uniformed figures. This effect explains why military, medical, or law enforcement uniforms command instant obedience and trust. On the flip side, uniforms can also intimidate. Think of masked figures in paramilitary gear eliciting fear without a word spoken. Neuroscientifically, uniforms simplify complex social judgments, providing a mental shortcut to categorize and respond quickly, which was crucial for ancestral survival. But this power can be exploited, manipulating trust and obedience without evidence or merit. Understanding how uniforms change perception reveals the hidden forces shaping our reactions daily, reminding us to look beyond the clothes and question what truly commands respect. Imagine facing a situation where everything feels out of your hands, chaos closing in, uncertainty pressing down. In those moments, helplessness can unravel even the strongest minds. Science shows that control is not just a luxury, but a survival mechanism wired deep within us. When people believe they have control, even if it's only an illusion, they manage stress far better and avoid panic. Psychologists call this the illusion of control, a powerful cognitive bias where the brain convinces itself it can influence events beyond actual power. This illusion triggers the release of calming neurotransmitters like serotonin, reducing fear and boosting resilience. Studies in emergency scenarios reveal that individuals given choices or small tasks, no matter how symbolic, perform better and maintain composure. For example, during natural disasters or medical crises, people who feel involved in decisions, like choosing evacuation routes or treatment options, experience less anxiety and greater cooperation. Even soldiers in battle show improved focus when they perceive some agency over their fate. This suggests control, real or imagined, anchors the mind amidst uncertainty. Understanding this biological and psychological truth highlights why leaders provide clear instructions and why rituals, routines, or simple tasks help us weather storms. Control prevents panic, not just by changing outcomes, but by stabilizing the mind's fragile balance in chaos. Imagine your world shifting beneath your feet, grief, loss, or sudden change fracturing the very sense of who you are. In these moments of identity collapse, something quietly powerful steps in: routines. Science shows that routines rebuild identity, stitching it back together one small, deliberate act at a time. Psychologists describe identity as a narrative constructed from repeated behaviors, values, and habits. When life disrupts this story, routines offer a steady framework, predictable actions that anchor us amidst chaos. Even simple acts like making your bed or brewing morning coffee send signals to the brain that order and selfhood endure. Neurologically, routines engage the basal ganglia, the brain's habit center, creating stable pathways that require less conscious effort and reinforce a sense of continuity. This automaticity provides comfort and reduces anxiety during turbulent times. Studies on trauma survivors and those facing major life transitions reveal that reestablishing daily routines improves mental health, resilience, and self-perception. Routines act as building blocks, slowly reconstructing the fragmented identity into a coherent whole. The beauty lies in their simplicity. Each small act is a stitch in the fabric of self, weaving strength from repetition. So when your identity feels undone, remember, it's the quiet power of routines that will rebuild you. What small act today can help stitch your story back together? Imagine a society where some rules are shouted from rooftops, but the most powerful ones linger silently beneath every glance and gesture. These unspoken rules shape behavior more forcefully than any written law because their quiet presence feels like natural order, not imposed agreement. The strongest social rules are never said out loud. That silence gives them power, making them feel inevitable and unquestionable. Social psychology explains that implicit norms govern much of our daily lives. We follow them unconsciously, motivated by a deep desire for belonging, acceptance, and harmony. These silent codes regulate everything from eye contact to personal space, social rituals to conversational boundaries, creating a shared reality without needing words. Anthropologists show that these unspoken rules vary subtly between cultures, transmitted through social cues and reinforced by group reactions. Because they're implicit, breaking them often leads to confusion, discomfort, or subtle exclusion rather than overt punishment. This quiet enforcement shapes behavior more effectively than explicit laws ever could. Neurologically, the brain processes implicit norms via automatic systems that guide social behavior before conscious thought arises. This pre-verbal understanding helps maintain social harmony efficiently and powerfully. Our brains detect these silent rules intuitively, allowing us to navigate complex social worlds without constant deliberation. Understanding the influence of unspoken rules reveals why social order feels organic and inevitable, masking the complex, fragile agreements beneath. Silence, paradoxically, becomes the loudest enforcer of conformity and cohesion, weaving invisible threads that hold societies together. Imagine a smile, not always a burst of joy, but sometimes a carefully crafted mask worn to survive. Science reveals that not all smiles express happiness. Many are social tools, subtle signals designed to protect, warn, or appease. Psychologists distinguish between genuine smiles, called Duchenne smiles, which engage the eyes, and social smiles that are more controlled, often masking true feelings. In high-stress environments like schools or workplaces, people use smiling as a shield to avoid conflict or punishment, conveying submission or friendliness even when anxious or fearful. Neuroscientific research shows that these survival smiles activate different brain pathways than joyful ones, serving as strategic communication rather than emotional expression. In primates and humans alike, baring teeth can signal appeasement, reducing aggression from others. This duality of smiling illustrates how deeply embedded social survival mechanisms are in our behavior. The smile becomes a complex language of power and vulnerability, a silent negotiation that can protect us from harm, mend social bonds, or hide pain behind a mask of warmth. Imagine a room where the smartest person's voice barely rises above the chatter, while a confident speaker commands full attention and influence. This illustrates a deep psychological reality. Knowledge alone doesn't guarantee influence. Neuroscience and social psychology reveal that humans instinctively prioritize charisma and confidence over raw intelligence or facts when choosing whom to follow. The brain's social circuits respond to cues of status, certainty, and emotional expressiveness far more strongly than to mere accuracy or expertise. Studies show that confident speakers, even when wrong, are often more persuasive than cautious experts, because confidence signals leadership and decisiveness, traits our ancestors relied on for survival in uncertain environments. Meanwhile, brilliance without social presence can be ignored or undervalued, as status drives our unconscious trust mechanisms. This explains why people follow charismatic leaders, celebrities, or influencers even in the face of contradictory evidence. The brain craves certainty and social cohesion, often sidelining critical thinking in favor of group harmony. Recognizing this gap between knowledge and influence encourages us to seek substance beyond style, question charisma's pull, and value truth even when it comes quietly. Because in the complex dance of human connection, confidence often leads the way, leaving knowledge struggling to catch up. Imagine a shrill alarm piercing the quiet. Instantly, logic takes a back seat. No one stops to verify if there's really a fire. The noise triggers an automatic, primal response. Neuroscience reveals that sudden loud stimuli activate the amygdala, the brain's fear center, bypassing the slower, rational cortex. This rapid alert system prioritizes survival over evidence, prompting immediate action before analysis. Evolution shaped this mechanism for life or death moments where hesitation could be fatal. In fire drills or real emergencies, the blaring sound floods our senses, sparking adrenaline release and preparing muscles to flee. The brain's fight or flight response suppresses doubt, replacing it with urgency. This is why even false alarms cause stampedes. Our minds choose safety through speed rather than verification. Behavioral studies show that humans, like many animals, rely on these instinctive cues to survive. The cost of ignoring an alarm is too high, so the brain accepts better safe than sorry. Understanding this helps explain why in crisis, emotion and reflex override careful reasoning, proving that survival instincts beat logic every time. Imagine stepping in front of a camera and suddenly feeling your actions shift, not by choice, but because the lens rewires your behavior. Science reveals that being filmed changes us profoundly. The presence of a camera triggers performance, conformity, or even confession, depending on who's watching. This effect is rooted in social psychology's concept of the observer effect. When people know they're being watched, their brains activate self-awareness and social monitoring systems, making them more likely to modify behavior to fit expectations or norms. The camera becomes a silent director, shaping actions and speech. Studies show that individuals act more socially desirable, polite, or restrained when recorded, even in private settings. Conversely, the camera can encourage honesty, as in recorded confessions or reality shows, where the awareness of observation heightens self-disclosure. Neuroscience finds that the prefrontal cortex, the area involved in self-control and social cognition, lights up when people perceive an audience, heightening judgment sensitivity and behavior regulation. This neural response evolved to maintain social bonds and avoid punishment or rejection. The camera lens thus becomes a powerful tool of influence, capturing not just images, but shaping the very reality it records. So next time you're on camera, remember, you're not just being seen, you're being shaped. How might the lens be rewriting your story right now? Imagine a group gathered to brainstorm, each person eager to contribute ideas. Yet, the best ideas don't always rise to the top. Instead, the loudest, fastest, or most dominant speaker often sets the tone, steering the discussion, even when their ideas are flawed or wrong. This isn't just social happenstance. It's a well-documented psychological and social phenomenon that can shape entire teams, companies, and organizations. Research in group dynamics shows that vocal dominance disproportionately influences decision-making. Loud or confident voices grab attention, creating a cognitive bias that makes others more likely to agree or hesitate to challenge, especially if they fear social rejection or conflict. This effect can silence quieter, potentially wiser contributions, skewing outcomes toward assertiveness rather than merit, evidence, or innovation. Neurologically, hearing a dominant voice triggers neural circuits associated with social status, authority, and threat detection, biasing judgment unconsciously. The brain prioritizes social harmony and safety, often deferring to those who appear most confident or commanding to avoid confrontation. This instinct can lead groups to follow charisma over competence, sometimes with costly consequences. Understanding this dynamic reveals why many group decisions reflect charisma more than quality. It highlights the importance of structured moderation, equal airtime, and intentional inclusivity to surface the best ideas, ensuring that loudness doesn't overshadow wisdom. Only by recognizing these biases can teams truly harness collective intelligence and make better decisions. Imagine a room where voices rise and fall, some commanding immediate attention, others barely heard. Science shows that who gets listened to, who is ignored, and who is interrupted reveals the invisible architecture of power. Social psychologists have long studied how attention flows within groups, uncovering that dominant individuals control conversations by steering focus and silencing dissent. Neuroscientifically, the brain's reward systems activate when we recognize authority figures, reinforcing their social status. Interruption isn't random. It's a subtle tool to assert dominance, signal control, and maintain hierarchy. Studies in workplaces, classrooms, and social settings show marginalized voices are often cut off, revealing systemic biases. Even eye contact patterns and body language influence who commands attention, shaping influence without words. This intricate dance of focus creates a map of power structures, exposing social dynamics often hidden beneath polite facades. Understanding these patterns helps decode leadership, inequality, and control, showing that attention is not just about hearing, but about who holds the real power to be heard. Imagine entering a dimly lit room where shadows soften edges and faces blur into mystery. In such an environment, lies feel easier to slip through unnoticed, while bright, glaring lights expose every detail with unforgiving clarity. Scientific studies confirm that lighting profoundly influences our honesty and perception of truth. Neuroscience shows that dim lighting reduces activation in the brain's prefrontal cortex, the center responsible for self-control and moral judgment, making it easier for people to bend the truth or hide deception. Conversely, bright lighting heightens awareness and accountability by stimulating brain regions linked to attention and ethical reasoning. Experiments reveal that individuals placed under bright lights tend to be more truthful and less likely to cheat or lie, as the environment primes them to feel observed and judged. This is why interrogations often occur in well-lit rooms, and why honesty feels harder under the spotlight. Beyond individual behavior, lighting shapes social dynamics. Dim spaces can foster secrecy and concealment, while brightness promotes openness and transparency. Our surroundings, therefore, affect honesty as much as conscience itself, blending external cues with internal ethics. Understanding this interplay reminds us that truth isn't just a moral choice, it's also shaped by the environments we inhabit, where light can illuminate both facts and falsehoods alike. Imagine trying to speak, but every few seconds, someone cuts you off. That fractured rhythm doesn't just disrupt your words, it chips away at how others see your authority. Research in communication psychology shows that smooth speech flow strongly influences perceptions of competence and wisdom. When interrupted, even the strongest ideas can seem weaker because the audience's brain struggles to follow fragmented thoughts. Our minds crave coherence. Fluent speech signals confidence and mastery, while interruptions create doubt and distraction. Studies reveal that speakers who maintain uninterrupted turns are rated as more persuasive and credible, regardless of content quality. Conversely, frequent interruptions activate social biases that undermine respect, making listeners question the speaker's expertise. In professional settings, this effect can reinforce power imbalances, silencing voices and diminishing influence. Understanding this dynamic highlights the subtle ways interruptions erode authority, not by the merit of ideas, but by breaking the essential flow of communication. Imagine slipping into a sharp suit or your favorite outfit and instantly feeling a boost of confidence, a change in how you carry yourself and speak. Science shows that clothing doesn't just cover us, it alters our behavior profoundly. Even subtle choices like color influence posture, voice tone, and willingness to take risks. Psychologists call this enclothed cognition, the phenomenon where what we wear affects how we think and act. Experiments reveal that people dressed formally perform better on tasks requiring focus and confidence, while casual attire can foster relaxation or creativity. Color psychology adds another layer. Wearing red can increase aggression and risk-taking, while blue promotes calmness and trust. These effects are linked to learned associations and cultural meanings embedded in our minds. Neurologically, clothing influences brain areas related to self-perception and social identity, altering hormone levels like cortisol and testosterone, which impact stress and dominance behaviors. For example, studies find that people wearing uniforms, doctors, police officers, exhibit heightened authority and responsibility, shaped by the symbolic power of their attire. So next time you choose your clothes, remember, you're not just dressing your body, you're shaping your mind and behavior. What message is your outfit sending today, and how is it changing who you become? Imagine standing in a crowded place, and suddenly a sense of danger washes over you, not because you see immediate harm, but because the people around you start to look anxious or scared. Safety, it turns out, is less about physical threats and more about social signals. We feel secure not just when we are physically safe, but when those around us appear calm and composed, signaling that all is well. Psychologists call this social referencing, the process by which we look to others to gauge how we should feel and respond in uncertain situations. When people's emotional cues signal calmness, our brains release calming neurochemicals like oxytocin, reinforcing a sense of safety and trust. Conversely, signs of fear spread rapidly, activating the brain's threat detection system and heightening alertness and anxiety, creating a contagious panic that can escalate quickly. Neuroscience shows that the amygdala, responsible for processing fear and emotional responses, is deeply influenced by social context. Collective emotional responses can amplify or dampen our own feelings of safety or danger, making the social environment a crucial factor in how we experience threat or comfort. This social contagion effect explains why calm leadership can prevent chaos and why group panic can spiral out of control. This explains why panic can erupt even without real danger, and why staying calm in crises can be life-saving, not just individually, but socially. Understanding that safety is social highlights the power of collective emotions in shaping our sense of security and survival. It reveals that in moments of uncertainty, the emotional state of the group becomes the compass for our own feelings of safety or fear. Imagine feeling the sharp sting of rejection, not from a wound on your body, but from a social slight or exclusion. Science reveals that social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain, making the emotional hurt feel as real and intense as an injury. Neuroscientists have discovered that the anterior cingulate cortex, a part of the brain responsible for processing physical pain, lights up during experiences of rejection or social exclusion. This overlap explains why being ignored, excluded, or criticized can cause profound distress, impacting mental and even physical health. Studies show that people who face repeated rejection may experience heightened sensitivity to pain, anxiety, and depression. Evolutionarily, this makes sense. Humans are social creatures, and maintaining group bonds was essential for survival. The pain of rejection signals danger, motivating individuals to restore social connections. Understanding that rejection literally hurts underscores the importance of empathy, reminding us that invisible wounds demand care just as much as visible ones. Imagine sitting at a family table, the aroma of a traditional meal filling the air. each bite carrying the flavors of generations, the essence of your culture and identity. Taste isn't just about flavor. It's a profound psychological anchor tying us to our heritage and community. Neuroscience reveals that the foods we grow up eating become deeply embedded in our brain's reward systems, linking taste with memory, emotion, and social belonging. Rejecting someone's meal can trigger more than mere dislike. It can feel like a personal rejection, akin to denying their family, history, and very bloodline. This is why sharing food builds trust and connection, while refusing it risks offense and social distance. Anthropologists observe that culinary traditions serve as living symbols of identity, reinforcing group cohesion and cultural continuity. For example, immigrant communities often cling fiercely to their native dishes, preserving identity amid foreign surroundings. The brain's limbic system ties taste experiences to emotional and social circuits, making food a gateway to understanding and acceptance. Recognizing how taste reinforces culture helps us appreciate the power of meals beyond nutrition, as bridges of empathy, respect, and belonging in an interconnected world. Because in every shared bite lies the story of who we are and where we come from. Imagine hearing words that should comfort, but the tone twists them into something cold or harsh. Voice tone holds a power far beyond the words themselves. Neuroscience shows that the brain processes vocal tone in the right hemisphere before decoding meaning in the left. This means we feel emotions embedded in tone instantly, often before we understand the message. Studies reveal that tone can convey sincerity, anger, or sarcasm, shaping how we trust and respond to a speaker. Even truthful statements lose impact if delivered with doubt or aggression. Conversely, a warm tone can soften harsh truths, making them more acceptable. This emotional filtering occurs rapidly, bypassing rational analysis. In everyday life, relationships succeed or fail on tone. More than content. Political speeches, negotiations, and personal conversations hinge on vocal delivery. Understanding that tone dominates words explains why what we say often matters less than how we say it, because tone delivers truth or distortion before logic even has a chance to intervene. Imagine talking to someone and noticing where their eyes wander, up, sideways, or down, and sensing something unspoken beneath their gaze. Science reveals that eye direction during conversation is a powerful signal, subtly revealing our thoughts and intentions without a word. Psychologists studying nonverbal communication have found patterns linking eye movements to cognitive processes. Looking upward often indicates active thinking or visualizing, as the brain accesses images or memories. Sideways glances can suggest creativity, but also deception, as the mind constructs alternate realities. Looking downward frequently signals withholding information, shame, or internal reflection. Neurologically, eye movements correspond with activation in different brain regions tied to memory, emotion, and executive control. For example, when fabricating a lie, the prefrontal cortex works harder, often triggering brief, involuntary shifts in gaze. However, cultural norms and individual differences mean these cues aren't foolproof, but combined with context, they offer insight into hidden motives. Next time you watch someone's eyes during conversation, remember, they're windows not just to the soul, but to intention. What story do their eyes tell that their words don't? Imagine holding a cup of hot tea on a chilly day. The warmth seeps into your hands, and somehow your heart feels a little softer. Science reveals this isn't just poetic metaphor. Physical warmth and emotional warmth are biologically intertwined. Cold hands literally reduce empathy, narrowing our perspective and dulling compassion. Psychologists have demonstrated that lower body temperatures can make people more self-focused and less attuned to others' feelings. When we feel cold, our brains prioritize personal comfort and survival, shrinking our social lens and making it harder to connect emotionally. Warmth, on the other hand, expands our emotional awareness, openness, and willingness to help others. Neuroscientific studies show that sensations of physical warmth activate brain regions associated with social bonding and empathy, such as the insula and anterior cingulate cortex. This neural overlap explains why we often equate warmth with kindness and caring, and why being literally cold can make us emotionally colder, less compassionate, and more distant. Experiments have even shown that holding a warm object can make people perceive others as more trustworthy and friendly, highlighting how deeply physical sensations influence social perception. This mind-body connection reveals that comfort and compassion are linked not just metaphorically, but biologically. Understanding this link between body temperature and empathy sheds light on how subtle physical states shape social connection. It reveals the profound ways biology blurs the lines between comfort and compassion, showing that sometimes a little warmth, literal or metaphorical, can go a long way in fostering human kindness. Imagine walking into a room filled with the fresh scent of citrus and crisp linen. Instantly, you feel at ease, more trusting, and ready to cooperate. Science reveals that certain clean smells, like citrus, linen, or fresh laundry, are deeply linked to our perceptions of safety and trustworthiness. Neuroscientific studies show that when exposed to these scents, our brains activate areas associated with comfort and social bonding. This association stems from ancient survival instincts. Clean smells signal hygiene, health, and order, reassuring us that the environment is safe. Psychologists find that people are more cooperative and generous in spaces scented with familiar fresh odors. Marketers exploit this by using these fragrances in stores and offices to foster positive interactions and calm. Even subtle exposure can boost feelings of trust without conscious awareness. Our brains weave scent into the fabric of social judgment, proving that cleanliness is more than visual. It's a sensory signal that shapes human connection and cooperation on a primal level. Distance is a language. Imagine entering a room and noticing how the distance between people shifts the entire mood. Too close, and it feels intimate or intense. Too far, and the connection fades into cold formality. Distance is a silent language our bodies speak, communicating emotions without uttering a single word. Neuroscience shows that personal space activates brain regions tied to safety and social bonding. Standing close signals trust and intimacy, releasing oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which deepens connection. But that same closeness can also trigger the amygdala, the brain's alarm center, if perceived as a threat. Conversely, stepping back creates a buffer zone that may signal discomfort, disengagement, or even rejection. Studies reveal that shifts in physical distance can alter perceptions of warmth and approachability, affecting relationships profoundly. For instance, when someone slowly withdraws in social settings, it often precedes emotional distancing, sometimes ending friendships silently. This unspoken language of proximity is shaped by culture, context, and individual comfort, but universally, it conveys powerful messages. Understanding that distance is a language helps us navigate social signals, read between the lines, and recognize when closeness nurtures bonds, or when stepping back quietly breaks them. Because sometimes, how far apart we stand says more than words ever could. Imagine entering a room full of strangers, feeling the subtle pull to mirror their words, gestures, even laughter. This unconscious copying is no accident. It's a deep biological drive to belong. Neuroscience reveals that our brains are wired for social connection. Disconnection triggers pain centers akin to physical injury. Imitation or mirroring acts as a social glue, synchronizing behavior to build trust and acceptance. Psychologists have shown that when people mimic others' speech patterns or body language, those others perceive them as more likable and trustworthy. This reflexive adaptation happens instantly, often without awareness, because belonging is critical for survival. Evolution favored those who could blend seamlessly into groups, as isolation meant danger. From adopting slang to matching smiles, imitation signals alignment with group norms. It reassures others that you are one of them. Understanding this primal mechanism explains why fitting in feels essential, and why social rejection hits so deeply. echoing a survival threat etched into our brains. Percentages. Calm panic. Imagine hearing a shocking fact, something terrifying or overwhelming, but then seeing it broken down into percentages, and suddenly it feels less frightening. Science shows that statistics calm panic by creating emotional distance, transforming chaos into manageable, abstract numbers. Psychologists explain this through the concept of psychic numbing, where large, vague threats feel distant and less urgent when quantified. When raw emotions meet precise percentages, the brain engages analytical circuits that reduce fear and foster a sense of control. Neuroscience reveals that numbers activate the prefrontal cortex, responsible for logic and reasoning, which can dampen the amygdala's fear response. This cognitive framing helps people process alarming information more calmly. For example, during health crises, communicating risks as percentages rather than absolute cases can prevent mass panic and encourage rational decisions. Similarly, investors handle market volatility better when data is presented numerically. However, this calming effect can also lead to underestimating real dangers, as numbers can obscure human impact. So, next time panic rises, look for the numbers. They aren't just statistics, but tools your brain uses to calm the storm of fear. How might percentages be reshaping your reaction right now? Imagine reaching out and touching a surface, perhaps a rough stone or a smooth silk. Instantly, your brain begins forming judgments, not just about the texture, but about the people, ideas, and situations connected to it. It turns out, the things we physically touch profoundly shape how we perceive and trust others. Psychologists have found that rough textures tend to prime harsher, more critical judgments. The physical discomfort or challenge of roughness spills over into our social evaluations, making us more suspicious, unforgiving, or even hostile. Conversely, smooth textures create feelings of comfort and ease, softening our impressions and increasing trust, warmth, and openness toward others. Neurologically, tactile sensations activate emotional centers in the brain, linking physical experience with social cognition and judgment. Touch becomes a powerful metaphor and mechanism, blending the physical and psychological realms. This explains why marketing materials, product packaging, or even a firm handshake subtly influence our feelings of trustworthiness and likability, often without conscious awareness. Research shows that these tactile effects extend to decision-making and interpersonal trust. For example, people holding a warm cup rate strangers as more friendly, while rough surfaces can increase punitive attitudes. This sensory social link reveals how deeply our bodies influence our minds. Understanding how texture alters perception reminds us that the physical environment silently shapes our relationships, opinions, and decisions through the things we touch. It challenges us to consider how subtle sensory cues guide social connection and trust in everyday life. Imagine standing firm and saying no with clarity, instantly commanding respect. Science shows that setting boundaries is essential for healthy relationships because people rarely honor what isn't clearly defined. Psychologists explain that asserting limits teaches others how to value your time, energy, and presence. When you communicate your needs openly, your brain releases oxytocin, which fosters mutual trust and respect. Conversely, failing to set boundaries can lead to resentment, burnout, and diminished self-esteem. Neuroscience reveals that clear no signals activate parts of the brain responsible for social cognition, helping others recognize and adapt to your limits. In everyday life, boundaries protect mental health, improve communication, and enhance personal autonomy. Saying no is not just refusal, it's a powerful language of self-respect that shapes how others treat you. By defining your limits, you carve space for meaningful connection and ensure your value is recognized. Imagine hearing a sincere compliment that lights up your face and softens your guard instantly. Flattery isn't just polite words. It's a powerful social tool that opens doors and melts defenses faster than any logical argument. Neuroscience shows that praise activates the brain's reward centers, flooding it with dopamine and creating feelings of pleasure and trust. When flattery feels genuine, especially if it reveals something personal or hidden. It taps into our deep desire for recognition and validation. This emotional boost lowers skepticism, allowing the flatterer easier access to influence and cooperation. Studies reveal that people are more likely to comply with requests or form positive impressions when they receive well-placed compliments, even if they suspect some manipulation. Politicians, marketers, and negotiators know this well. Strategic praise can break down barriers that reason alone cannot. Evolutionarily, flattery helped build alliances and social bonds, signaling respect and attention to valued traits. Yet, its power depends on authenticity. Empty or obvious flattery can backfire, triggering distrust. Understanding how flattery gains access teaches us to recognize when praise is sincere and when it's a subtle key unlocking influence, reminding us that beneath every compliment lies a bridge between minds and hearts. Imagine chasing a goal so intensely that everything else fades away, even your sense of right and wrong. Science shows that when people focus narrowly on an objective, their moral awareness diminishes. This cognitive tunnel vision shrinks the ethical lens, making questionable actions invisible if they block progress. Neuroscientific research reveals that goal pursuit activates the brain's reward centers while suppressing areas responsible for moral reasoning. This imbalance allows people to justify harmful means by fixating solely on the end. In experiments, participants willing to cheat or lie increased significantly when motivated by strong incentives, blinded to ethical consequences. This effect explains why corporate scandals, political corruption, and personal betrayals often occur under pressure to succeed. The target becomes a laser that cuts through empathy and fairness, leaving only the path forward. Understanding this cognitive distortion warns us how ambition can cloud conscience and why ethical safeguards are crucial when stakes run high. Imagine every rule you follow as part of a story, one woven not just from facts, but from consequences, fears, and shared beliefs. Science and social theory reveal that rules aren't just dry laws. They are powerful narratives that guide behavior because they carry consequences wrapped in story. Anthropologists describe laws and social norms as myths with teeth, stories that embed values, warnings, and authority within cultural frameworks. We don't obey rules simply because they're logical or fair, but because the narrative around them, threats of punishment, promises of order, creates meaning and compels compliance. Psychologically, stories engage the brain's narrative networks, making abstract rules concrete and emotionally resonant. This framing activates the brain's threat detection systems when rules are broken, linking behavior to expected outcomes. For example, traffic laws function not just by their wording, but by the story of danger and safety told through signs, fines, and social expectations. Religious and moral rules work similarly, embedding lessons within compelling narratives that shape identity and community. So rules aren't just instructions, they are stories we live by, with real teeth that bite when ignored. What story does the rule you follow tell you, and how does it shape your choices? Imagine growing up in a family where your role isn't just about birth order, it's about survival strategy. The oldest child often learns control, responsibility, and leadership, developing habits that ensure the family functions smoothly and resources are protected. The middle child masters adaptation and diplomacy, negotiating their place in a crowded social space. Meanwhile, the youngest becomes a magnet for attention and charm, using creativity and emotional intelligence to secure their place. These family roles aren't mere stereotypes. They are deeply ingrained tactics, shaped by early social environments and biological imperatives. Psychologists find that birth order influences personality development because children compete for parental attention, affection, and resources. The oldest child often assumes leadership roles, developing organizational skills, confidence, and authority to maintain status. Middle children learn to negotiate, adapt, and form alliances, balancing between older and younger siblings. Youngest children frequently use social and emotional tactics to stand out, become the family's focal point, and secure affection. Neuroscientifically, these patterns reflect the brain's plasticity during formative years, wiring children differently based on family dynamics, social feedback, and survival needs. Each role offers unique survival benefits, ensuring a child's place and resources within the family system and shaping lifelong social strategies. Understanding birth order as a survival tactic reveals how deeply early family structures shape behavior, personality, and interpersonal strategies throughout life. These roles persist far beyond childhood, influencing how individuals navigate relationships, careers, and social environments, subtly guiding their interactions and tactics. Imagine hearing a random statistic. Suddenly, it feels more believable, more trustworthy. Science reveals that numbers, even arbitrary ones, dramatically increase credibility in communication. Psychologists find that when people hear data points, especially precise figures with decimals, their brains respond by assigning greater authority to the speaker. This effect, called the numbers bias, taps into our deep trust in mathematics as an objective truth. Neuroscientific studies show that numerical information activates the prefrontal cortex, responsible for analytical thinking, making claims seem more logical and grounded. Advertisers, politicians, and experts leverage this bias to persuade and influence opinions, even when statistics lack context or relevance. Their presence creates an illusion of expertise and reliability. Math has become the modern language of legitimacy. Adding decimals and data transforms vague statements into compelling evidence. This unconscious trust in numbers shapes how we absorb information, proving that the simple addition of digits can sway minds and build unquestioned authority. Imagine watching a crowd move together, dancing in unison, marching step by step or swaying to the same beat, and feeling an invisible thread pulling them into connection. Rhythm isn't just movement, it's a powerful catalyst for empathy and social bonding. Neuroscience reveals that synchronized movement activates mirror neurons and brain areas involved in social cognition, allowing individuals to feel each other's emotions more deeply. When people move in sync, their heart rates and brain waves begin to align, creating a shared physiological state that fosters trust and cooperation. This shared tempo essentially becomes a shared mind, breaking down barriers and accelerating emotional connection. For example, soldiers marching together develop heightened group cohesion. Dancers experience profound unity, and even casual conversation flows smoother when speech rhythms align. Studies show that synchronized rhythm increases generosity, reduces conflict, and promotes group identity. This phenomenon likely evolved because synchronized action improved cooperation and survival in early human communities. Understanding that rhythm affects empathy helps us appreciate how music, dance, and coordinated activities build bridges between individuals, making connection not just emotional but biological. Because when we move together, our minds move closer too. Imagine holding a simple object wrapped in luxurious packaging. The moment before you even see what's inside, your expectations shift. This is the power of containers. How something is presented changes how we perceive its value. Neuroscience and psychology reveal that fancy packaging activates reward centers in the brain, enhancing pleasure even before the experience begins. Experiments show that food tastes better when served on elegant plates or wrapped beautifully, because the brain anticipates quality and enjoyment. Similarly, a ring in a velvet box carries more emotional weight, heightening feelings of significance and desire. This phenomenon is called sensory expectation bias. Our minds fill in details based on context, often altering the actual experience. Marketers use this principle to shape perception, but it also touches on deeper truths about human cognition. Reality is not fixed, but filtered through layers of meaning. The container becomes part of the content, rewriting how we experience the world. Imagine whispering a secret to someone, no matter how small or meaningless, and suddenly feeling their loyalty deepen. Science reveals that confidentiality, being trusted with secrets, boosts loyalty by activating powerful psychological bonds, even when the secret holds little real value. Psychologists call this the secret keeper effect. When entrusted with confidential information, the brain triggers feelings of importance and trustworthiness, strengthening social bonds. This act signals inclusion and exclusivity, making people feel valued and connected. Neurologically, sharing secrets engages the brain's reward system, releasing oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which fosters closeness and attachment. This biochemical response underpins why confidentiality creates loyalty beyond the content of the secret itself. Studies show that groups who share secrets experience higher cooperation and commitment. Even in marketing and leadership, revealing selective confidential details builds trust and allegiance. However, the power of secrecy also carries responsibility. Misuse can damage relationships deeply. So next time you confide in someone, remember, you're not just sharing information, you're weaving a bond of loyalty. How might the secrets you hold be shaping your connections right now? Imagine a conversation where subtle nods ripple back and forth, small, almost unconscious signals guiding the flow of agreement and connection. People naturally nod when they speak, encouraging understanding and consensus. Without realizing it, you nod back, and that simple gesture can subtly shift your mind, nudging you to agree, not from reasoned conviction, but from a deep, primal urge to mirror others and feel safe. Psychologists explain this as the power of nonverbal mirroring, a fundamental social bonding mechanism that fosters trust and cooperation. When you mimic someone's nod, your brain interprets it as a sign of safety and acceptance, reducing your resistance and opening you to influence. This automatic mimicry happens beneath conscious awareness and can alter opinions, soften disagreements, and even shape decisions, often without us realizing. Neurologically, mirror neurons fire during these exchanges, creating empathy and connection by mirroring observed actions internally. The body often leads the mind. Our physical responses like nodding shape thoughts and feelings, illustrating how social cues sculpt belief and agreement. This is why public speakers often use nodding to engage their audience, and why in negotiations a well-timed nod can encourage consensus. This explains why in groups or negotiations, the rhythm of nodding can subtly steer outcomes, amplifying agreement or smoothing conflict. Understanding how nodding shapes opinions reveals the hidden dynamics of communication, showing that agreement often begins in the body before it reaches the brain, making it a powerful yet subtle force in human interaction. Imagine holding a warm cup of tea or coffee and suddenly feeling a subtle shift, not just in comfort, but in how you perceive others. Science reveals that warmth influences social judgment, making people see others as friendlier and more trustworthy. Psychologists call this the warmth effect, where physical temperature affects emotional warmth. Experiments show that participants who hold a hot drink are more likely to rate strangers as kind, generous, and approachable compared to those holding cold beverages. Neuroscientific research links this phenomenon to the brain's insular cortex, which integrates physical sensations with emotional processing, blending tactile warmth with social warmth. This deep-rooted connection likely stems from early human experiences where nurturing warmth symbolized safety and care. Marketers and therapists use this insight to create welcoming environments, knowing that warmth can subtly build rapport. The simple act of sharing a hot drink becomes more than ritual. It's a psychological bridge fostering trust and connection, proving that temperature shapes not just mood, but how we judge the world around us. Imagine sitting quietly, replaying a heated argument or a heartbreaking memory in your mind, and suddenly feeling your body tense, your heart race, or tears well up, even though nothing is happening right now. This is the power of mental rehearsal. Simply thinking about emotions like anger or sadness can train your brain and body to react as if you're living those feelings in real time. Neuroscience shows that imagining emotional experiences activates the same brain regions as actually feeling them, including the amygdala, which governs emotional responses. This repeated mental simulation strengthens neural pathways, building emotional reflexes that shape how you respond in real situations. For example, ruminating on anger can make you more reactive, primed to lash out, while rehearsing sadness can deepen feelings of despair. This mechanism evolved to help humans prepare for future challenges by mentally practicing responses, but it can also trap us in cycles of negativity if unchecked. Understanding how rehearsal trains emotion empowers you to consciously choose what to focus on, using mental practice to cultivate resilience, calm, or joy instead. Because your mind is not just a witness to emotion, it's a trainer shaping the reflexes that govern your life. Imagine a room bathed in soft, dim light, where voices lower and walls feel closer. Darkness does more than soothe the eyes, it unlocks our deepest selves. Neuroscience reveals that bright lights trigger alertness and activate parts of the brain associated with vigilance and self-protection, making openness difficult. In contrast, dim environments reduce sensory overload, calming the nervous system and creating a sense of privacy. Psychologists find that vulnerability thrives when people feel unseen and safe. That's why secrets, confessions, and heartbreaks often surface after midnight, when shadows cloak us in anonymity. The dimness lowers defenses, allowing emotional walls to fall. This biological wiring explains why intimate conversations rarely happen in harsh daylight. Darkness offers a sanctuary for trust and connection, shaping human relationships in profound, unseen ways. Imagine your mind spotlighting moments of betrayal with blazing intensity, while acts of kindness quietly fade into the background. This is no accident. Science reveals that betrayal is remembered far longer than kindness because in our evolutionary past, betrayal once meant death. Neuroscientists explain that the brain's amygdala and hippocampus, key players in processing emotion and memory, prioritize negative, threatening experiences to enhance survival. Betrayal signals danger, triggering strong emotional encoding that makes these memories vivid and long-lasting. In contrast, kindness, though vital for social bonding, often lacks the urgent threat response that cements memories. Unless we consciously record or reflect on kind acts, they risk fading faster from memory's grasp. Psychologists highlight the negativity bias, where negative events disproportionately influence perception and recall. This bias shaped human survival by keeping us alert to threats within social groups. But awareness of this imbalance empowers us to deliberately cultivate gratitude and record kindness, rewriting our internal narrative toward trust and connection. So, while betrayal may burn brighter in your memory, it's your choice to shine a lasting light on kindness. What memories do you choose to carry forward? Imagine the screen between you and another person acting like an invisible mask. Suddenly, words flow freely, feelings spill out, and boundaries shift. Online, people say things they'd never dare to voice face to face. This digital distance removes our natural inhibitions, creating a paradox where cruelty escalates, but so does raw honesty and confession. The screen simultaneously hides and reveals, amplifying extremes of human behavior. Psychologists call this the online disinhibition effect. Behind screens, the loss of immediate social cues, like facial expressions, tone of voice, and body language, reduces accountability and empathy. This disconnection can amplify aggression, leading to harsh words, trolling, or cyberbullying that would rarely happen in person. Yet, it can also foster openness, allowing vulnerable confessions, honest conversations, and deeper connections that might feel unsafe offline. Neurologically, the brain's social monitoring systems relax when physical presence fades, lowering self-censorship. This shift alters how we regulate emotions and social behavior, sometimes reducing impulse control and increasing emotional reactivity. Digital communication reshapes boundaries, blurring the lines between public and private selves in complex, often unpredictable ways. Understanding how screens change our interactions reveals the double-edged nature of digital life, where distance breeds both cruelty and unexpected intimacy, reshaping human connection in the modern age. It challenges us to navigate new social landscapes, balancing freedom of expression with empathy and accountability in virtual spaces. Imagine craving an ending, a neat conclusion to a story or a chapter of your life. Science reveals that while our minds yearn for closure, nature doesn't always provide it. The human brain is wired to seek patterns and resolutions, often forcing a sense of completion even when none exists. Psychologists explain this as the closure effect, where unresolved events create mental discomfort, triggering the brain's default mode network to fill gaps with imagined endings. This cognitive filling in helps reduce anxiety and allows emotional processing to continue. In grief or trauma, this means people may invent narratives or find symbolic meanings to make sense of loss. Neuroscientific studies show that closure activates reward centers, releasing dopamine that soothes uncertainty. Yet, life often remains ambiguous, unpredictable, and incomplete. Accepting the absence of closure is a profound challenge, but recognizing the brain's tendency to fabricate endings can empower us to embrace uncertainty and keep moving forward despite unanswered questions. This delicate dance between yearning and reality reveals how deeply our minds shape meaning from the chaos of existence. Imagine entering a room and instantly sensing someone's confidence or their doubt before they say a word. Body language speaks volumes, silently shaping how others perceive you and how you perceive yourself. Neuroscience reveals that posture, pace, and motion send powerful signals to the brain, influencing social judgments and even self-esteem. For example, standing tall with shoulders back activates areas linked to dominance and confidence, boosting your own feelings of power while making others see you as authoritative. Conversely, slouched or hesitant movements often convey insecurity, triggering perceptions of weakness. Studies show that adopting expansive postures can increase testosterone levels and reduce cortisol, the stress hormone, rewiring your mind toward success and calmness. This nonverbal communication sets the stage before words begin, telling a story of intention, emotion, and identity. In negotiations, job interviews, or casual interactions, your movement often predicts the outcome more than your speech. Understanding that body language predicts outcome empowers you to harness posture and motion consciously, crafting the narrative you wish to project. Because before you speak, your body is already telling the world who you are. Imagine standing before two doors, each promising a different path, but no matter which you choose, you end up in the same place. This is the illusion of freedom created by choice. Psychology shows that presenting options gives people a sense of control, even when all routes are predetermined. This phenomenon tricks the brain's decision-making circuits into feeling empowered, reducing resistance, and increasing compliance. Studies reveal that when people believe they are making choices, dopamine is released, enhancing satisfaction and engagement. Yet, the control is often superficial. Both options funnel toward the same outcome. Marketers, politicians, and negotiators exploit this cognitive bias to steer behavior while preserving the appearance of autonomy. Understanding this reveals how freedom can be shaped not by what choices exist, but how they're framed. The power of choice lies less in actual control and more in the perception of it, reshaping how we experience decision-making and influence. Imagine your life as a stage where unseen emotional scripts from childhood quietly direct your every move. Science shows that these internalized scripts run your life. When triggered, they replay familiar scenes, driving your behavior and reactions, often without your conscious awareness. Psychologists describe these as emotional schemas, or scripts, patterns of thought and feeling learned early in life, shaped by caregivers and environment. These scripts guide how you respond to relationships, stress, and challenges, often creating repetitive cycles. Neuroscience reveals that these patterns are hardwired into neural circuits, making them automatic and difficult to change. When a trigger activates a script, a phrase, gesture, or situation, the brain replays the emotional scene, prompting habitual responses. For example, someone with a script of abandonment might react to perceived rejection with intense fear or withdrawal, even if the present situation is safe. However, therapy and mindfulness can help rewrite these scripts, creating new neural pathways and outcomes. By becoming aware and intervening, you can break the cycle and craft a different story. So your past scripts shape your present, but they don't have to dictate your future. What script are you ready to rewrite today? Imagine your mind as a vast iceberg, most of it hidden beneath the surface, vast and mysterious. Almost everything you think, feel, and do arises from unconscious processes, not deliberate choices. The real you acts first, driven by instinct, automatic reactions, and deeply ingrained patterns. Your conscious mind comes later, reasoning second, and only realizes what happened much later. Often, your conscious self is playing catch-up to decisions already made, constructing stories to explain actions after the fact. Psychologists reveal that the unconscious brain governs the majority of mental activity, processing vast amounts of information rapidly and shaping behavior before awareness dawns. These automatic responses evolved for survival, allowing split-second decisions that don't overload conscious thought. From instinctive fear responses to gut feelings, most behavior is orchestrated beneath awareness. Neuroscientifically, the brain's limbic system, responsible for emotion, memory, and primal urges, triggers actions before the frontal cortex, the reasoning and planning center, steps in to explain and rationalize. This sequence explains why we sometimes justify choices after the fact, unaware of the deeper motives driving us. Our sense of agency is often a constructed narrative, a second-hand story we tell ourselves. Understanding that most of you operates unconsciously challenges traditional views of free will, responsibility, and self-awareness. It reveals that conscious reasoning is just the tip of the iceberg. Our true self is a complex, layered process unfolding beneath, with depths we rarely perceive but constantly shape our reality in profound ways.